Horizon Thunder Sphere! Hello and welcome everyone to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, saying hello. And yeah, may the 4th be with you. Happy Star Wars Day to everybody who observes and celebrates. My relationship with Star Wars is very complicated. I love 4, 5, and 6. I I don't love 1, 2, and 3. Although there's parts of 3 that I think are pretty cool. And 7 was forgettable, and 8 and 9 were disasters. So, yeah, hopefully everyone is doing well. And yeah, what is new? I don't like the color. I don't like the color of this light back here. Hold on a second here. There we go. That's better. Okay. Oh, you know what? I forgot about Rogue One. Here's the problem with Rogue One. Rogue One was good. I don't need Jedi for Star Wars, but I don't think I could. I don't think I could tell you the names of like. I might not be able to tell you the name of any of the characters. Jyn Erso. That's the only character I can remember. All the other characters, completely forgot. Asian guy that kind of was force sensitive. No clue. The guy who was, Ghost Dog Samurai or whatever. No idea what his name was. Again, I don't remember anybody. I might have gotten to that eventually, but that's only because they just did like a new show with it. Right, exactly. If they hadn't done a new show with him, 0%. Look at this. Somebody knows their Rogue One. Saw Gerrera. Alrighty. Well, hopefully we have ourselves a nice little stro here tonight. As it may be apparent, we are going to be talking about Pathfinder 2. We're going to be talking about the Rogue. And we've gotten some support from our viewers, and we've had some tip goals, and people want to see more Pathfinder 2. So here we are tonight. Is all about a conversation around the Rogue. And I think we'll start by kind of talking a little bit about the history of the Rogue in D20, because it wouldn't be my channel, right? We're not going to just talk about builds or something like that, right? We're going to learn. We're going to learn today. We're going to learn a little bit about kind of how we got to where we are today, and how the Rogue in Pathfinder 2 might be kind of a different beast than it was in some other aspects of other prior editions. And and then we'll get into the mechanics of the Rogue, places where I think the Rogue is strong, places where I think the Rogue is weak. And then I think we'll also talk a little bit about, I don't like builds, but we'll definitely talk about, what are the things that you can do with the Rogue inside of the Pathfinder 2 game system. And, some of the stronger options, some of the more interesting options. And then lastly, as we talk about Pathfinder 2 Remastered coming out later this year, we'll take a look at some of the Rogue mechanics and ask ourselves, do these mechanics support the idea and the play style that the Rogue is designed to capture? And if we were in charge of Pathfinder 2 Remastered, what elements or what broad concepts might we change? I don't think we're going to get too into the woods about individual feats or anything like that, but I'm sure it will come up from time to time. So yeah, we got a lot of people showing up, proving my point that Pathfinder 2 is very popular. So let's see who we got in here tonight. We got everybody here. Zolgathor was here earlier. Dan is here. Carzoni, Rule of Cool, JG, Jacob, Alaran, Claude is here. Rex Felis is here. Jackal Torn Moose. What's up? What's up, Jackal? What's up, Knights? Frostjack is here. Welcome, Frostjack. Zerverus is here, able to catch a stream again. Happy to see you there. Bam Curtain Bear with their prolific knowledge of Rogue One is here as well. Icarus is here. I have not seen Mandalorian, so. Cranky Pants. Welcome, Cranky Pants. New to the Patreon. Happy to see you here. Beowulf, welcome. Also agrees with my take on Star Wars. Awesome. I got to admit, I think what I've seen of the Ahsoka show, I never really watched the 3D animated series, so like I don't have like a close personal connection to Ahsoka, but I think she has an interesting story, so I'll see. It'll be interesting what they could do with that. Emperor Epic, Claude Corp, Dave, happy to catch us live, and a class that Dave loves. Well, great, Dave. Maybe you can help us out here, because one of the things I really want to make sure that everybody realizes this is a conversation. I've been playing Pathfinder 2 for 3 years. You've been playing Pathfinder 2 for 3 years, going on 4 years, actually. And I'm sure we've all learned little things, nuances, subtle details about the system. And so this is kind of really where we just need to sit down and talk about it. And, you know, again, we're not trying to break or bust the game. You know, anything I say here, take with a grain of salt. Realize I am not some sort of, you know, God level expert master. I don't even think, you know, Mark Seifter would say that he isn't some master of the game. And lastly, and this is something I really want to preface, if you're familiar with any of our rating streams, just because I feel like a choice or an option is weak mechanically does not mean, number one, that it's not the right choice for you and your character. And number two, that if you're having fun with that mechanic or that feature or that feat or that whatnot, that you're doing anything wrong. You're not. You're doing it just right. The purpose of the game is to engage with it and with the mechanics, play through, and hopefully that generates a pleasurable experience for you as an accidental outcome, right? But you know, as an ancillary outcome. Like, the game is obviously trying to mathematically create these challenging scenarios that you're going to overcome with your mechanics and your creativity and your ideas. But fundamentally, don't feel like just because something's more powerful than another thing that the other option is unchoosable. That being said, Pathfinder 2 is a game that prides itself on, I think, being a complex game with a lot of moving parts, and making interesting decisions is a part of the appeal and part of the core fun of this game. We always talk about there's kind of two ways to play Pathfinder 2nd Edition. There's playing Pathfinder, and then there's playing Path Builder. And a lot of people like playing Path Builder, a lot. So to say that that's not part of the game, I think is a little bit short-sighted. Anyways, just wanted to preface that. Mike asking how I'm doing. Mike, I'm doing good. Actually, Mike, for my viewing audience, you'll see tonight that we have 2 chat goals, one for our super chats, one for our stream elements tips, which you can find a link below in the description. It takes you in one extra step to go get a stream elements, but we get a higher percentage of that. So, you know, YouTube doesn't get their cut. So we appreciate it. It means a lot to us. Remember that any tips or super chats are going to help you maybe take out the hype boss, and maybe you become the hype boss, which is just totally a flex. It's not anything that matters. Sometimes it matters. Sometimes we'll give the hype boss some extra cred. But I spent $4,000 today because I'm going to get braces, sort of. I'm getting Invisalign, or, you know, something like Invisalign. But I had to drop $4,000 today because my dental insurance does not cover orthodontics over the age of 18. So I had to pay for it completely out of pocket. So
Jason B tipped $10 as a heads up. Class names like Rogue and Thief are too tied to the world's oldest role-playing game. So going forward, the Rogue will now be called the Reprobate.
Right, Rogue is too much identified as OGL. We can't call it the Rogue anymore. Thank you, Jason B, for the $10 tip as we try to start offsetting this massive braces cost. Guitar Guy Nick, thinking of doing the same thing with braces because I had braces as a team and I got into a fight and it hasn't been fixed yet since due to the cost. Yeah, Guitar Guy Nick, I never had braces as a team. My dentist has been after me for years to get braces because of the way that my teeth are aligned. They grind too much on each other. And so I've been wearing away my enamel for many, many years. And I've had 2 root canals because I keep getting, cavities because my enamel's wearing down. And he's like, you need to shift your jaw, man. And I never wanted to do it. And the real full braces seem like too much of a work. But, you know, the technology and the prices have really come down on this Invisalign stuff. So we're going to go ahead and do it. It's a rebuilding year. All right. Let's see. What else do we got in here? All right. Well, again, Dominicus Priest, Dominicus. I just got a Invisalign Lesterve, and it's not so much better than braces, which I had as a kid. I also have a grinding problem, and I'm hoping it'll help the alignment. Yep, same thing. They want me to wear a night guard already, and I'm kind of like, well, if I'm going to wear a night guard, I'll just get the braces, and I'll wear it all day, and then actually fix my bite. So anyways, good stuff. Okay, so let's talk real briefly about the rogue in Pathfinder 2 and where the rogue came from, and kind of understand how things have shifted and how we've gotten to where we are. And when we start thinking about the rogue's mechanics, that we need to really kind of take a closer look at it. So obviously the rogue got its start as a thief. Contrary to popular belief, the thief was not actually originally a part of the original D&D release. The thief was added later, I believe, in the Greyhawk supplement. So why was that? Well, I think part of the reason is because I think the core idea of original Dungeons and Dragons was that kind of everybody was kind of a thief, right? And everybody was kind of like a no-good scoundrel. And Cranky Pants with a $10 super chat, and Damian Williams with a $2 super chat says, hey, read my member message. Okay, well, thank you, Damian Williams. I'll go back and get that. Cranky Pants with a $10 super chat, preparing to run my second ever Pathfinder 2 session in 45 minutes. Well, Cranky Pants, that's awesome. Congrats, and I hope it goes well. Hopefully your first session went well. Looking forward to that. It's not a stream unless I miss a super chat. Let's see here. There we go. Sorry. Part of the problem is, Damien, my chat cascading style sheet doesn't like properly really highlight these. So Damien says Dex Rogue is broken, Mastermind sucks, all the rest are fine. All right, well we'll get to there. Maybe we'll see how it turns out. Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Cranky Pants, for that. So originally, I have like a love-hate relationship with the rogue, and let me tell you something. It's my least favorite class in D&D. Like, if you talk about the four pillars of D&D, right? The fighter, the cleric, the wizard, and the rogue, the thief. It is by far my least favorite. And a big part of the reason why the thief or the rogue was always my least favorite is because I've never really liked skill systems in D20. I think they're kind of boring. And even going back to the earlier days, when they introduced the thief, they introduced the idea of thief skills, which at the time were based off a percentage system. As you got higher level, your percentages would increase of what percent chance you had to move silently or hide in shadows. There was no DCs or anything opposed by that. You just had a flat check. And so all the rogue skills, pickpockets, open locks, find, remove traps, climb walls, moving silently, hiding in shadows, all of those things were rogue skills. And or I should say thief skills. And it sort of created this idea that, well, only the thief can find and remove traps. Only the thief can climb walls. To be fair, the mechanics of the game didn't really explicitly say that, but it did create this sort of idea that the thief existed to sort of use these skills, and which essentially consisted of rolling the dice. But that wasn't really interesting to me, and so I never really found that really particularly interesting. But all of the traits of the thief were really useful in a dungeon-based exploration game. Now, the thief did have one offensive ability. It was called backstab. And what a backstab gave you was +4 bonus to hit, and you did double or triple or quadruple or 5 times as much damage as you got higher in level. But a backstab was not a sneak attack. A backstab was like you are kind of assassinating someone. They are unaware that you are even there. You're springing from the shadows and, putting them down. It's not like we're flanking the person and now I can backstab them. It was not that simple. It was much more of a stealth sneak attack. If you could think about it, quintuple. Thank you, Roman. If you could think about it from Pathfinder 2 terms, like you had to, hide in shadows and be undetected and sneak, and then you could backstab and do a bunch of damage. Which was fine because the idea of the thief was they weren't supposed to fight. They really weren't a fighter, right? William Brandis with their member chat says, the reason you don't like the thief class is because of all the years we spent playing in Mike, that's our buddy growing up, Lankamar campaigns. Maybe. I always did think the thief was a little edgy, and people played it a little edgy and a little, I don't know, the thief never really seemed particularly heroic to me. I will say, when they introduced the rogue in 3rd edition, I liked it a lot better. Because the rogue felt like it could be heroic, and the rogue, in fact, well, the mechanics around the rogue changed. Because what I was going back to say is that in those days of 1st edition D&D and 2nd edition D&D, it was okay to not be a good combatant. In fact, if we go back to the original Thief, they were a D4 hit point class, just like the wizard, or I should say the magic user. And the reason that what Gary Gygax was trying to tell you is these classes aren't designed for fighting. These classes are designed for casting spells and, breaking and entering and stealing treasure and traps. They're not meant for fighting. But because so much of the game back then didn't necessarily revolve around combat, it didn't matter as much that your character wasn't great at combat. A thief might hang out, literally hide, just, not do anything in a fight. Maybe they spring out once near the end when everybody else is almost dead, and they stab the guy who never knew the thief was there. But they weren't fighting round around. And of course, the combat only took a few minutes. So it didn't, 10 minutes. So it didn't really matter that much. But as we move into the 80s and the 90s and everybody started playing video games, the ability for the thief to be interesting kind of lost its way, because video game RPGs kind of necessarily relied on combat, right? And the thief didn't really have a role in that. And so by the time you get to 3rd edition in 2000, which is pretty much what the Pathfinder 2 rogue is really still fundamentally based off of, the thief had become the rogue, and it had fundamentally changed what it was. Yes, it still had all of these skills, but to be clear, everybody else got skills now too. The skill system was much broader and more refined. Anybody could be trained in, thievery or searching or moving silently, hiding in shadows. Not just the rogue, but also too, the zeitgeist around the game had changed, and combat was now king. And combat was sort of the default kind of mode of play of the game for a lot of players. I mean, I would argue that if you look at most campaigns, D20, that have occurred since, 2000, and that includes Pathfinder 2, but also 3rd edition D&D, I would say that you probably spent something like 50% to 60% of your game time in combat, and then probably like 30% of your game time, maybe 40% of your game time, just, fluffing, just shooting the shit, role playing, talking a character, or just making plans, or kind of somewhat in character, somewhat out of character. So that means that you're really only interacting with the other part of the game mechanics, less than 10% of the time. And since they wanted everybody to be a part of the action, and since combat was the name of the game, the rogue sort of transformed, in my eyes, from being basically a treasure hunting thief who couldn't fight at all, to kind of this skilled, dexterous fighter who uses trickery and deception, who also happens to have some extra skills. So to me, the rogue really has become more than ever, less of a thief. And in fact, we're going to go, this to me is the best example of this that I could think of. If we go over to the rogue here, that's not it. Book? Nope, that's not it. PDF browser? Nope, that's not it. Nope. I don't know where I put this. Oh, there it is. Go figure. All right, sorry about that. So if we look at the rogue, we could see that the rogues, I'm just kind of skipping ahead really quickly, but you can see that the rogue has these rackets, and one of the rackets that the rogue can be is the thief. And you're like, oh, okay, so the thief is back, right? And this, the point I'm trying to make is that these characters are about combat now. And you're like, oh, what is the benefit over other rogues that a thief gets? Well, you do more damage with your weapons. What does that have to do with being a thief? Nothing. This mechanic has nothing to do with being a thief at all. But, you know, they're like, well, you know, the game is about fighting. So, you know, it kind of really reflects the fact that, you know, the design of the character has changed to essentially be more of a dexterous fighter type character. So real quickly, before we get into this, I want to say thank you to everybody for coming out and supporting us tonight. Remember to like and subscribe. And if you at any point are really feeling you're enjoying the stream, feel free to tip through our super chat or tip through our Stream Elements link down below. You can also check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Knights of Last Call, to keep these conversations going 24/7. Okay. So, Rogue, Pathfinder 2. If you watched our class review, you know that I rated this class S tier. The reason being is I think the Rogue is probably one of the most competitively strong, mechanically deep classes that we have available in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. As we go into other classes, eventually, you'll hear me talk about this a lot. A lot of the other classes in the game that focus on sort of primarily on basically your non-spellcasters, the people who really focus on, you know, combat as their sort of primary, you know, goal, all have to pay a price. They have to pay a cost in order to do the thing that they want to do, right? The swashbuckler needs panache. The barbarian needs to rage. The hunter needs to, the ranger needs to hunt prey. The magus needs to sort of recharge or reload their spell strike, right? Every class, monks have to enter a stance. Now, the top of this pile is the fighter, who just gets their bonuses because that's what they are. They just get, they have to have opponents with hit points. That's the only hurdle that they have to jump through. But primarily, the rogue has their hurdle is their target needs to be flat-footed. And obviously, even if you're a fighter or a barbarian, you want your target to be flat-footed. So already, number one, because, you know, in a nutshell, like in a vacuum, as a barbarian or a ranger, if you didn't have to spend an action to do your thing, if you could just be as effective as you would want to be anyways, you probably wouldn't want to be spending that action. My point is, rogues need flat-footed in order for most of their class features to function. Well, if you're playing Pathfinder 2, you want your opponent to be flat-footed anyways. You want your foe to be flat-footed anyways. And one of the things that we'll see as we look at the Rackets, which are sort of like the subclasses or the sub-builds of the rogue, a lot of them basically give you a new or improved or interesting way to make your target flat-footed. But no matter what racket you pick, the target will be flat-footed if you flank them. And the only thing that flanking opponent asks most of the time is just moving next to them. And most rogues, most barbarians, most fighters, most monks all have to move to get next to their opponent too. So basically, the rogue really isn't asking you to do that much. It's asking you to move to your opponent with a stride action, which you already had to do anyways, and ideally and preferentially set up a flank, which again, all the other classes are trying to do as well. So in that way, what you are doing not only synergizes with the kind of core strategy of the game, but it also helps out your allies, because if I'm setting up a flank, then my ally is getting the benefit as well. So we all sort of benefit from that. And, you know, I that's one of the reasons why I think mechanically, I think the rogue does so well, because they truly have the ability to sort of be flexible. Rule of Cool says ranged rogues are crying right now. And well, they should, Rule of Cool. Being a ranged rogue, in my personal opinion, in Pathfinder 2 is the juice is not worth the squeeze. Could it be fun? Absolutely. But if you're a ranged rogue, you are going to be relying upon either action taxes, like hiding and, you know, that kind of actions, or you're going to rely on your allies making the character making your foe flat-footed outside of flanking, like for example, grappling them or tripping them, all of which could totally happen. But it is the case that it's a little underwhelming. And then, if you're using something like throwing knives, as you say here, -411, great, except now you have to have, a certain number of throwing knives. You have to have quick draw. Like there's hoops that, now here's the thing. You could do all those things. Of course you can. Pathfinder 2 gives you the tools to do them. But after jumping through all those hoops, okay, I'm going to hide. I'm going to spend an action to hide. And now the target is, and then I have to make a check and I have to pass the check. So not only is there an action involved, there's a check involved, which I could fail. Then I have a feat that lets me pull out my knife and then I can throw it and it's a sneak attack. But what did I get for that? Does that do some insane amount of damage? Does that do more damage than if I was just stabbing the guy with my knife in melee? No, it doesn't. It does the same amount of damage, potentially less damage. So it's very frustrating, in my personal opinion, to jump through hoops to not get rewarded for it. Now, could you do it because it's style and it's sick and it's sweet? Yeah, you could totally do that. And I mean, that's totally reasonable to do. But I do find like it's the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Jacoby, they absolutely get the skills to hide better. Yeah, they are the class that can definitely pull that off. I'm simply saying that if I stab someone with my throwing knives or with my dagger in melee while flanking my opponent, I will do the same amount of damage and potentially even have the potential to do way more damage, which we'll get to in a few minutes, than if I had to hide or feint or recall knowledge through the mastermind racket. Flat-footed is just reliable. It relies, the less dice rolls you make, the higher chance of success you have, right? So Rookie, though, brings up an excellent question or point. Rookie said, isn't the safety of range an innate advantage over the dangers of melee? Now, Rookie, this is where things get really interesting. Yes. Except two things. One, in the past, we talked about this. This is where the philosophy of the game has changed in some places, but it hasn't caught up in other places. Okay. The original Thief absolutely wanted to avoid the dangers of melee. They had horrible armor class. They had terrible hit points. But the modern day Pathfinder 2 rogue has the same armor class as everybody else. And they have 8 hit points a level, which is insane, right? Because they were D4 in original D&D. They were D6 in Pathfinder, or 3rd edition, I should say. And now they're like essentially a D8 class. They are a combative class. They've got the armor class. They've got the hit points. They have reactions like nimble dodge that can actually make them very defensible. Now, are they going to be as defensible as a champion? No, of course not. But my point is in many ways, a rogue if you had a rogue and a barbarian in melee, my guess is, even with the extra hit points that a barbarian has, because of the armor class penalty that a barbarian gets from raging, my guess is their survivability is probably about equal. I'd have to do the complete math on that, but my guess is it's probably about equal. So in that respect, my answer is no. And then secondly, Rookie, attacks of opportunity are fairly reduced in this edition. Now, I understand a lot of players tend to focus on attacks of opportunity because they're very powerful. But a lot of the times, the advantage of being at range was if the monster wanted to come over and smash you, the monster was going to take a lot of attacks of opportunity. That is not always the case or often true in this edition of Pathfinder 2nd edition. So being able to move and just get smashed and attacked is, kind of a thing that happens a lot. And so being at range doesn't have as much defensive. Now, the other advantage to that is range could be very far away, but the problem then is you're running into the limitations of the map size and how big things are. And then suddenly cover enters the equation and their armor class is going up. it can get really problematic. You can do it, and I'm sure there are plenty of instances where it's the right best move, but sometimes I think that the juice isn't worth the squeeze. JG says, every PF2 AP sure doesn't agree with the idea of letting range characters dodge melee, given the 60-foot rooms. Absolutely, JG. That's exactly kind of what I was talking about. And I think a 60-foot room is very generous. There are plenty of rooms in Abomination Vaults where you fight big fights, and the total dimensions of the rooms are less than 40 feet by 40 feet or less than 30 feet by 30 feet. So that's just a move action away from everybody and everything. And if your character truly was at range, they probably wouldn't have any line of sight or line of effect to the combat that is going on in that room. So, it's pretty crazy. Frostjack, that's another interesting point. When you start talking about bows, now we're talking about, well, do I get the volley penalty if I'm too close? Do I have to be farther away? I could use the short bow, but it's less damage. Okay, well, I could use throwing knives, but they have a really low range. So it's just kind of like it's a really, kind of nasty spot there. So let's take a look at the rogue. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the rogue from a weapon perspective. And again, actually, before we do this, I'm sorry. Let me do this. Let's go through the rogue and let's just talk about what the rogue gets. We'll ignore Rackets for a second, okay? All right. So the rogue starts off with expert reflex, expert will, and we know that they're going to be really good at reflex. They get a ton of skills. They get training in all simple weapons, a couple of martial weapons, and unarmed attacks. Now, we know that in Remastered, rogues are going to have training in all martial weapons. To be honest with you, that doesn't change much if they don't change an important line of text. And my guess is they're not going to change this important line of text, which is the rogue's bread and butter ability is called the sneak attack. And it says, if you strike a creature that has the flat-footed condition with an agile or finesse melee weapon, or an agile or finesse unarmed attack, or a ranged attack, or a ranged unarmed attack, that's a hell of a thing. That's when you can do your extra D6 of precision damage, which does scale as you go through the game. So even if your rogue could now use a longsword, you're still not gonna be able to sneak attack with it unless they change, the text on this. So, I feel like rogues are still pretty much going to be using the same kind of, rogues. Now, yes, that is a great possible option. Honest Benny points out that in the greater scheme of things, Pathfinder 2nd Edition has something like, I don't even know, 700, 600 or something different weapons now. It is, in my opinion, way too much bloat. And as a result of them basically playing Mad Libs with weapon traits, there is now probably some ridiculously dumb weapon out there that fits any possible, need that someone would fill. And then, of course, this is a problem because what it means is that people will default to using like one of 3 or 4 weapons, maybe even 2 weapons, if they want to be competitive. So we'll see what this says, or we'll see how this goes. But again, we get sneak attack, which is kind of our bread and butter. This is a fantastic ability. Sneak attack, for those of you who aren't aware, back in the day did not double with a critical hit. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the damage from sneak attack does double with your critical hits. That can mean a lot of extra damage, and it adds up pretty dang quick. Additionally, anytime you strike your enemy and they are flat-footed, you are going to be doing your sneak attack damage. There are editions of the game, 4th edition, for example, where a rogue can only sneak attack once a round. So in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, a rogue can sneak attack several times in a round. They are going to do their extra, 2d6, 3d6, or whatever, 4d6, several times throughout the course of that fight, or throughout the course of that round. So very, very, very powerful ability. Really makes them very powerful and very, very, very competitive. Official 304 weapons. Okay, I was off by a couple hundred, but that's still a lot, Emperor. You got to admit that is still a lot of weapons. 304 weapons. That's a lot. So next, and again, the game is telling you. I mean, the game is trying to tell you what you're supposed to be doing here. Number one, you spring into combat. If on the first round of combat you roll deception or stealth for initiative, creatures that haven't acted yet are flat-footed to you. Okay, well, rolling deception for initiative is potentially problematic, but it's really easy to roll stealth for initiative. All you have to do is, while your character is in exploration mode, just let your GM know that you are avoiding notice. If you are avoiding notice, your character is trying to, well, avoid notice, which means, they're sticking to the shadows. They're not being too loud. They're trying to stay out of the, middle of the room. And so if you switch into encounter mode, which happens when you roll initiative, and you are avoiding notice, then you will get to roll with your stealth for initiative. And that means, because the one problem that the rogue really has is that the rogue goes first, then, well, how am I going to flank? And if I can't flank, how are they going to be flat-footed? So surprise attack takes care of that. And so, again, there are other rogue types. There are strength-based rogues. There are int-based rogues. But even if you're a mastermind rogue, or even if you are a ruffian rogue, you still get surprise attack. And as long as you have surprise attack, this is always going to benefit you for rolling stealth for initiative. And if you're benefiting from rolling stealth for initiative, then you want a good dex, because you want to have the highest possible initiative score that you could possibly get. So again, does the class pigeonhole you into a certain area? No, but now Gabriel brings up a really interesting point. I do want to bring that up. Gabriel, that's an excellent point. In fact, Gabriel might be channeling some of our very earliest Knights of Last Call videos back in our early combat tactics day, when I talked about initiative, delay, and readying. And oftentimes it's actually going last that is most beneficial, because you get to see what everybody has done. You can set up flanks. You can set up aid actions and reactions. If the initiative order is either known, or maybe it's a secret and you're not quite sure, if your rogue goes in, surprise attack, sneak attack, and then all three of the other monsters go and they surround your rogue and beat him into a pulp, that's not very good, right? That's no bueno. I think actually, I personally think that given most sizes of most rooms that people are playing in Pathfinder 2 these days, I don't think it's completely out of the question for a rogue to sort of use one action to stride in, second action to strike, and third action potentially to stride out, if in that situation, in order to avoid getting, kind of ganged up on and destroyed. But that is something to be aware of. Surprise attacks benefits ranged a lot more. Floyd, I will agree that it benefits ranged a lot more, but at the same time, it's good for that first round, is what I would say, Floyd. And again, I think the ranged rogue is totally viable. I'm just saying that you're going to jump through a lot of hoops a lot of times, and things are going to start being annoying. Cover is going to be a thing, and ranges are going to be a thing, and it's going to be a real problem. But I agree with you. Surprise attack is great for sort of the ranged rogue. I don't think enough people do that in Pathfinder 2, actually. I don't think enough people are very obsessed with getting that second attack in. So I don't think a lot of people do that sort of move, strike, move. In fact, if you played Pathfinder 1 or 3rd edition D&D, you know that you had to take 3 or 4 feats to be able to do that. You had to take dodge, mobility, and I think spring attack was the 3rd feat, just to be able to do what I just described, which was move, strike, move. And then even then you were moving with your whole movement split between the two moves. In Pathfinder 2, you could move 30 feet if you have fleet, 30 feet, strike, move back 30 feet. That's crazy. That's a lot of power. All right, we'll get to this later, but rogues get, they added the investigator later, but rogues get the most skill feats in the game. Everybody else gets them every other level. Rogues get them every single level. That combined with getting skill increases every level often means that rogues end up being some of the most best healers, in the game, because they are able to, at least early on, quickly get a bunch of skill ups in medicine and get all of the battlefield medicine, ward medic, continual recovery that allow medicine to really, really be a massive source of hit points out of combat. And so the rogue, being very well trained to this, they probably have a reasonable wisdom, can tend to be a very good medicine. But you get so many of these things, and we'll get into this. I say just take whatever you want. All right. Next, again, rogues. Why are they good? Well, because rogues are great when they're fighting one powerful monster, because sneak attack is ideally suited for doing a lot of damage to single targets. And again, they have a lot of abilities through their rackets or just through their play positioning to make their target flat-footed, which is something you want to do when the target is higher level than you. You want to bring that armor class down so that you can strike it. But the rogue also gets nice benefits when they are fighting lower level creatures. When, just like you as a group of party members want to surround and flank a single bad guy, when the party is outnumbered by lower level monsters, the best tactic for them is to flank you so that your armor class drops and they can actually have a good chance of hitting you. Deny advantage just completely wipes that out. And I think too that being able to avoid being flat-footed from hidden, undetected creatures as well is not something to sneeze at. So this is just a fantastic all-purpose ability that allows the rogue to sort of operate on both sides, right, of the spectrum of being able to sort of be that single target DPS monster, but also being very, very effective even in a larger scale combat. So, I mean, I think Deny Advantage is actually really, really good ability. Barbarians get it too, and it's actually quite good. All right, again, we're beating a dead horse here, but it's like flat-footed, 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 right? It's like, okay, hey, at 5th level, everybody's weapon, you know, everybody gets expert weapon proficiency. You finally get critical specialization. Now, the barbarian only gets critical specialization if they're raging. And the ranger only gets critical specialization against their hunted target. Guess what? Rogues only get critical specialization, you guessed it, against a flat-footed creature while using an agile or finesse melee weapon or blah, blah, blah. So, again, it's one of those things where the game is basically, it's just saying like, look, everything good that you want out of this is coming from your opponent being flat-footed and you basically sneak attacking. It's like, hey, at low level, you did more damage. Guess what? You're level 5 now. So now not only do you do more damage with your sneak attack, but also you can apply your critical specialization effect. So as a rogue, there is just absolutely no reason not to just focus on anything and everything that you can do that will give you that sneak attack, that flat-footed condition, so that you can successfully deliver a critical specialization effect, that you can deliver sneak attack. GM is sneaking in, but got to sneak out. Catch the VOD. GM Scott, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Emperor Epic asks, is there even 20 skill feats worth thinking about? In my true answer, Emperor Epic, and remember, I believe the rogue is an S tier. The answer is no. I do not think there are. I mean, even if you started just taking crazy, weird ass ones, no, I do not actually think there are 20 skill feats worth thinking about. But this is also part of the reason why I'm more upset at good skill feats than I am at bad skill feats. Because in my opinion, all the skill feats should kind of be bad. It should just be almost kind of a flavor decision. Should not really, some skill feats are just way too powerful, and it makes the other skill feats seem like less good by comparison. Okay, at level 9, we get our debilitating strike abilities, which you can improve with feats later on. Guess what? You gotta hit a flat-footed creature. So again, at this point, the game has basically stacked everything into just one thing. There's just one thing that you need to do, which is something that you were going to do anyways. And so that's what makes the rogue so, dare I say it, kind of easy to play. Because as long as you can make the creature flat-footed, and the game gives you a lot of ways to make a creature flat-footed, all of your abilities work. And there's no cost, and there's no penalty. So it's really, really, really powerful and effective. We pick up better saves as we go higher level. We get Perception Legendary at 13, which is really, really nice. And Eventually, at the end of the game, we get Master Strike, which, because it has the incapacitation trait, is mostly just for flavor, but it's your chance of maybe possibly against a lower level opponent who you probably were going to kill almost instantly anyways. If they critically fail, then you can kill them just straight out, which is, you know, it's fine. It's whatever. It's cool. All right. Pathfinder 2. All right. So, rogues. We've got, I thought I did that right. Here we go. All right, so here's our rogue right here. And we can see that they basically get weapon proficiency at the same level as everybody else. And again, I know a lot of people, this is pretty much well known, but I mean, it goes without repeating this, but in my personal opinion, rogues are combatants first, and you should be thinking about your character as a combatant first. Okay. They get their weapon proficiencies at the same level as a barbarian or a ranger. They get weapon specialization at the same level. They become a master at the same level. They get greater weapon specialization at the same level. So these are characters that are the game, you know, in the past, rogues were on a lesser attack, you know, on an attack bonus. Now they are on the essentially the same attack bonus as all the other martial characters, excepting the fighter, who of course is better. Armor. We talked about this before. Rogues get light armor. Okay. And I forgot Bard instead of one rogue. Oh, and you're saying for the ultimate party. You're saying best party comp. 2 rogues, 2 fighters, all with hammers and flails. I mean, that would be very, very powerful. There is no doubt about that. Again, going back to what I was talking about, defensibility. Remember, the rogue is on the same armor progression as everybody else. Trained, expert at 13, master at 19. You know, right up there with the other melee classes, like the barbarian and the ranger, or the, you know, swashbuckler. So the fact that you start with, in many cases, an 18 dex and light armor means that you are starting with, you know, the magic number is 5, right? If you add your armor bonus plus your dex bonus, you want to get to 5. And if you're in heavy armor, you want to get to 6. But heavy armor carries with it the penalty, of course, of moving slowly. So the rogue kind of starts the game at highest AC possible. I mean, outside of, you know, a champion, but like at levels, you know, even then, because very few characters are going to start with full plate, so it doesn't even matter. So yeah, the rogue basically maintains defensibility throughout the entire game, and with things like deny advantage and nimble dodge, they can actually be one of the most defensive characters, actually, classes in the game. Comes as no surprise from a saves perspective here. Fortitude is their weak spot, and they never get higher than master. But in my personal opinion, you should probably be putting points into Constitution as a rogue. And the reason I say that is because as a rogue, your fort save is going to be your lowest. You're already going to get so many skills that pumping up your intelligence isn't super worth it. And you probably are going to want those extra hit points. But that being said, you can just take canny acumen at higher level or low level to get you an expert in fortitude early. You can take it at level 3. You can train it out at level 9, and then you can train back into it at level, whatever it is, 16 or 17 when it goes up to master. You know? Reflex is a joke. Now, here's the thing. Reflex, your character is amazing at it. Obviously, they're incredible. By level 7, not only are they a master, but they have the, you know, sort of the super save, and they can upgrade successes. Basically, evasion is what we would call it. But here's the deal. Obviously, failing will saves and fort saves is kind of the worst, right? Those are the scary things. Those are the debuffs. Those are the spells that can really mess with your character's mind, charm, dominate, right? Those are very scary. To be clear, to be honest with you, rogue reflexes is oftentimes the least scary because it's just damage, and we can deal with damage. But in my experience, playing Pathfinder 2 and all these D20 games, you are going to make a shitload more reflex saves than you ever will fort and will saves. So while the reflex saves aren't necessarily always the worst, because a lot of times it's just damage from the breath weapon, damage from the fireball, damage from the trap or whatever, in my experience, you might make 2 or 3, maybe even 4 times as many reflex saves as you do fortitude saves or will saves. So being really good at that is fantastic. Also, I should point out that the rogue is one of those classes that has a key stat, dex, which aligns with one of the 3 save stats, which is con, wisdom, and dexterity. Now, no class, maybe the kineticist apparently, no class has constitution as a key stat, but the rogue is one of the classes that can have dexterity as a key stat, so that's really sweet. And, we know that there's classes like the cleric, which can have wisdom as a key stat. So whenever your key stat also aligns with a save, and in the case of the rogue, it also aligns with their armor class, and also because they have surprise and they can use stealth, or surprise strike and they can use stealth because of avoid notice, it also aligns with their initiative because they can use stealth, which is a dex-based skill. So you suddenly start to realize, okay, wow, this class really just, has to be maxed in dex. Now, yes, there are other builds, like the ruffian rogue, which can have a key stat in strength. Cool. But realize that it's not like the other elements of the game all switch over to strength instead of dex. Your reflex is still going to be based off of your dex. Your armor class is still going to be based off of your dex. Yes, the ruffians get medium armor proficiency, but if you're using stealth, it's still based off of your dex. So there is a lot of advantage to being a dex key stat rogue. And then lastly, will save. And the only thing I want to point out about this chart is the hilariousness to me that alchemists don't get expert in will saves until level 7. The fighter gets expert at level 3. The rogue starts at expert. The barbarian starts at expert. But the alchemist does not become an expert in will saves until level 7. That is just so weird to me. And they never get any better, by the way. That's it. They cap it at expert. It doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any higher than that. And it's like, what is going on there? Damn it, alchemist. But anyways, the rogue gets expert in will saves, and it's a long time until, like it is for so many classes, you can see right here, until you get master all the way near the end of the game. And there's not a lot you can do about this, because you can't take canny acumen because you started at expert. And, you're probably going to end up putting some boosts into your wisdom. Maybe. But your will save is going to be not great because it's a long time to go until you get that master. But again, that's just, that's just the name of the game. These weird inconsistent proficiency bits drive me nuts. Yeah, sometimes you got to wonder why did they pick what they picked here? Damien is quite correct. There's a reason why the Alchemist has been buffed twice and is getting a rewrite in 2.5. That is very true. So again, unbelievable reflex. You're going to lag in Fort. And Will does, Will is as good as it's going to be for, most of the classes, like a good third of the classes in the game are in the same boat as you, which is you're not going to get master until level 17, but you probably are going to put a few points into wisdom. And so that's okay. Perception. They are, along with the investigator, best in the game. Start off at expert, master by 7, and legend by 13, even before the ranger, who doesn't get it until 15th level. So perception is going to be one of your strong suits. Another reason why you might have high wisdom. I should point out, by the way, that most of the time we use perception for initiative as well, but we really want our characters to be using stealth for initiative because we're avoiding notice, right? But remember, you become a master in stealth at level 7, and you become a legend in stealth at level 13, and presumably, maybe, hopefully, your dex is your key stat. So your stealth score should always be higher than your perception, even though your perception is really, really good. But one of the jobs or duties of the rogue can oftentimes be finding traps and finding hidden things and hazards. So having a fantastic perception is never a bad thing. And in a pinch, it is the default, score for initiative. So, or the default ability for initiative. So pretty good there. Chris with a $5 super chat says, all stats are equal, but Dex is more equal than the rest. Chris, I don't think this is a big secret, but a lot of people have said it. I have said it. Dexterity is probably the most overpowered stat in the game. I personally think you could probably like combine strength and con together and call it like might, and like strength does like, strength adds to your attack bonus, your bulk, and it adds to your hit points and your fort save. And you're like, that seems crazy. That seems ridiculous. It's like, I just described dexterity to you. So, because dexterity can affect your attack bonus, your armor class, your reflex save. It's like, it is a lot of things. And it's pretty crazy. Dex has been the super stat since BX. That's true. Dexterity has always just been absolutely insane. Alternative ability score intensifies. Yeah, again, I would probably change up ability scores there a little bit. Whipplestein, $10 super chat. Thank you, Whipplestein. Thank you, everybody, for showing the support. Remember, we got super chat goal, $50 to get some more PF2 streams here in the coming up weeks. And then if you want to throw some money my way and the tips using the link in the description below, again, I spent a lot of money today, so I'm very sad about it. Anyways, Whipplestein with a $10 super chat, thank you, says, almost always miss these live sessions as I'm getting my kiddo to bed around this time, but always fun to catch up on them. Looking forward to the upcoming live plays. Well, thank you, Whipplestein. Appreciate the support. And yeah, we're looking forward to playing Whipplestein. The Knights of Last Call. It's not just been on the channel. I mean, we have had a really hard time playing RPGs this year to date. We played some in January. February was almost completely missed. We made characters for a Legend of the Five Rings game in March, and then we couldn't play them for the last couple months. And then we played like 2 sessions of Abomination Vaults, Pathfinder 2. But it's really, we've had a hard time getting consistent gameplay setting. Everyone's been so busy, and there's been a lot of stuff going on in everybody's personal lives and families. It's been kind of a crazy time. Now, Floyd, I am going to go ahead and agree with you here. It is not as Pathfinder 2 has done a good job of reining it in a little bit. Dexterity is not as crazy as it used to be in 3.5 and 5e. It's good. It's still, in my opinion, one of the top stats in the game. But yeah, you are correct.
Mighty Dave tipped $5.
Thank you, Mighty Dave.
Small tip to help keep the channel from going all actual plays.
Mighty Dave says, screw actual plays. Mighty Dave, we will never be all actual plays. I don't think my players would allow that. That would be too much playing. Frostjack says 4E shill time. I really like the every defense having 2 stats contribute to them. Yes, that is also very good. In 4th edition, you take the highest of your strength or constitution. That goes to your fortitude. You take the highest of your intelligence or dexterity. That goes to your reflex. And then you take the highest of your charisma and your wisdom, and that goes to your will save. That is pretty nice. And then Rule of Cool says use middle of 3 for saves, which is what 13th Age does. So if I can't exactly remember what they're tied to, but you have physical saves and mental saves, I think, at 13th Age. And they only have 2 saves. One represents physical stuff, one represents mental stuff. And the physical save is, I think, you basically put your modifier for strength, dex, and con in high to low, and whichever one's in the middle, that's what your bonus is. So if you had a +4 strength and a +1 con and a +1 dex, your middle stat is +1, and you would get a +1 to your stat. Anyways, it's an interesting system. Whipplestein says, I like the role play of the Mastermind Rogue, but almost always in building Thief because of how strong it is. Very true. Because, here's the thing about the Mastermind Rogue. So let's... Hey! Combat Medic Bush just re-upped their YouTube membership, becoming an adventurer now for Oh, gee, probably a good long time in a row now. Let's see. That might be 12 months for Combat Medic Bush. Let's take a look. Oh, no, that is the big 13-month streak. Thank you, CMB, Combat Medic Bush. Thank you so much. Beowulf says, speaking of actual plays, are there any upcoming non-Pathfinder 2nd Edition actual plays? Things like Fate and or Blades in the Dark. Beowulf, Frostjack is completely correct. We were supposed to launch a Root game last year. Root being a Powered by the Apocalypse game. But we decided, you know what, let's build out a new studio to kind of really make it a cool place to play and a great place to stream from. I was never really happy with our old studio. It always looked kind of run down and there was just shit laying around in the background. I was like, I want someplace cool. Cool for me, cool for my players, cool for you at home. So we said, oh, we'll spend, instead of launching in August, we'll take a couple months off and we'll build this whole new studio out. Well, guess what? I've never built a studio before. Neither has Bob, neither has Aaron, and it's taken us a very long time and many, many, many thousands of dollars to build up this cool studio. But it is essentially all but done. And then we are going to not only play Root, I'd love to play Scum and Villainy, Blades in the Dark, Fate, Broken Compass, 7th Sea, Dune 2D20, like you name it. I want to play a bunch of different games there as well. All right. So let's go back to our Archives of Nethys. So we talked about what the rogues get in terms of class feat. And by the way, I'm a big believer that you almost don't need to take feats, right? Like the core abilities of the class are going to tell you what to do, right? Sneak attack, make things flat-footed, sneak attack. Great, cool. We have a baseline. We understand what's happening here. Okay, use the ranged weapons that you're proficient with, which is short bow. Or simple weapons, and have it be agile or finesse, right? End of story. Great. Awesome. Cool. Great. Grand. Cool. Let's talk about the Rackets and how they kind of change that up a little bit. But also, I want to say something here that's going to be a little bit, maybe, I don't know, controversial. I'm going to start at the bottom with the Thief, because in my opinion, the Thief represents the most basic concept of the Rogue. You're a nimble, lightly armed, quick thinking scoundrel who, well, not a scoundrel because we have a scoundrel here. They just ran out of terms. You're the classic kind of rogue, going back to the Thief. Now, like I said before, being a thief means when a fight breaks out, you can do more damage with your weapons. You get to use your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier. Now, this is a big deal. Your key stat is strength. So now by stacking your key stat is dex. By stacking dex, not only are we getting it to our stealth checks and our acrobatics checks, we are now getting it to our armor class. We're getting it to our reflex save. We're getting it to our attack rolls. Now we're also getting it to our damage rolls. And, obviously it's going to be 18 at level 1. So that's 4 points of damage, which is worth more than a sneak attack die. A sneak attack die of D6 is only worth 3.5. So this is worth a lot. And by the end of the game, assuming your dex is maxed out, you'll have a +7 bonus, which is worth 2 whole extra dice of sneak attack damage. So being able to add your dexterity modifier to your damage is a big deal when, for the most part, and I've said this a lot, the best condition that you can inflict on a foe is the dead one. And that usually necessitates running them out of hit points as quickly as possible. So, yes, -411. Thief Racket is sad on steroids. This is actually a really great point, because the nice thing about the Thief is, number one, you can max out your dex and be pretty much solid. But that means that you have 3 other boosts per level, or per, at level 1, 5, 10, whatever, that you can kind of spend on whatever you want to. And the cool thing is like you could put it into charisma and pick up charisma skills and charisma skill feats, maybe even some charisma rogue class feats. Or you could put it into int or wisdom or con or even strength if you want to. Not that there's much of a reason to. It's really nice because you don't have to take anything else. You're kind of free to pursue what you want to do. And here's where the hot take comes in. I understand that there is the role-playing aspect of being like, I want to be that mastermind rogue. And yes, I understand that there are class feats that require you to have the mastermind rogue racket in order to be a mastermind. But by far and away, what a mastermind lets you do is you can choose int as your key ability score. But again, just because it's your key ability score doesn't mean you're attacking with your int. It doesn't mean you're now using your int for your armor class. Honestly, actually, if we're being completely honest here, I would love for the mastermind rogue to say you can use your int to attack. You can use your int for your armor class. Now I know people say, oh, that's stepping on the investigator's toes. Maybe that's why you don't need an investigator. Maybe you just need the rogue racket mastermind, and boom, there you go. You have it. And it's like, oh yeah, that character is like Sherlock Holmes when they're fighting. They're not using their dexterity. They're using their mind. They're anticipating. They have already moved out of the way before that person even started their swing. So that's why they use int for their armor class. I would much rather see that, because all this does is it means that when you use recall knowledge on a foe and succeed, by the way, again, I cannot stress this enough. Remember, if you move to be flanking with a creature, it's flat-footed. It doesn't get a save. There's no skill check. In order to stride, you don't have to make a skill check. In this, you have to make a check. That means you're spending an action to recall knowledge, which can be useful. A lot of it depends on your GM and how gracious and generous they are with the recall knowledge. Somebody should probably rewrite the recall knowledge rules and then maybe publish it in a PDF that's available to, say, a select group of, I don't know, patrons. Somebody should do that. I think that we've waited long enough for somebody to do that. I don't know who would do that though. Anyways, it makes them flat-footed against your attacks until the start of your next turn. And basically, you get to do it right now. Jade, $5 super chat says, watched at 2x speed to catch up. You went from a Ben Shapiro speech pace to sounding drunk in comparison. Jade, I have watched myself at times 2 speed many times, especially when I'm editing videos. And I completely agree with everything that you just said there. So thank you. You and I, we're on the same wavelength. Floyd says, Derek, are you going to do that? Yes, Floyd. That is, I was trying to be clever, but, that has been on my docket for a while for Battle Cry issue number 3 is I'm trying to rewrite the recall knowledge rules. Anyways, my point is you don't have to be a mastermind rogue to be a mastermind rogue. Your character can be the thief racket and get all the really cool benefits of being a thief racket, and just have your character take a good int and take a bunch of lore skills and take a bunch of knowledge skills with your 7+ skills that you get per level. With a good int, your character might be getting 9 skill increases at level 1 and every level. So it's like you could be really knowledgeable. You could pick up skill feats and general feats, even rogue class feats that will reinforce this idea that your character is a mastermind. I think too many people pick one of these rackets, Eldritch Trich. In fact, this is one of the reasons I don't like subclasses, by the way, because they think this now defines what my character is. Oh, I picked the mastermind racket. Now I have to take all the mastermind rogue class feats because I'm a mastermind. That's just what I'm supposed to be doing. And just the same, I don't like that class feats are restricted to rackets. I actually don't like that. I think that defeats the purpose of feats. Feats are supposed to be an option and it should be exciting. And you should be able to be like, yeah, I'm a thief. I want to pick up this cool mastermind-like rogue ability. I don't want to have, it's stupid that I should have to have the racket to be able to do it. It's something about Pathfinder 2's design that I don't like. In fact, one of the reasons I really like the fighter's design is if you look at the fighter's design, they don't have a subclass. Neither does the monk, really. Sort of, because of stances. But the point is like for a fighter, they have definitely, okay, these feats are for two-handed weapons. These feats are for sword and board. These feats are for dual wielding. But there's nothing that stops or prevents a fighter from just being like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to pick up some feats for, two-handed weapons. And I'm going to carry around a sword and a board. And I'm going to carry around like a pole arm or a great sword strapped to my back for times when I really need to bust out the big damage. And they can just take those feats. I think that design is better off. I like it a lot better. Anyways, so thief. All right, moving up. Scoundrel. This is your rogue that is supposed to be a smooth talker. And of course, what does it do? It gives you a combat ability. When you feint against an opponent, they are flat-footed against melee attacks until the end of your next turn, which is pretty cool. It means that you don't have to feint every single turn. But again, I point out that your characters should be trying to flank anyways, because you want your allies to flank, right? Like they want the bonus. They're going to be trying to flank anyways. They're going to be trying to trip the opponent. They're going to be trying to grapple the opponent. They're going to be trying to put the flat-footed condition on them any way they can. And so while it is nice to have these in a pinch, I think relying on these, and actually this could potentially create bad behaviors, because this might make a rogue think, someone playing Pathfinder 2, oh, I'm going to go over here by myself, and it's cool because I have this ability to feint, and I'm going to, I don't know, throw them off guard. And then they're going to be flat-footed to me, by the way, just me, unless I critically succeed. And you should basically just never count that you should never assume that you're going to critically succeed. A lot of people judge things based off of the ceiling when that is the wrong way to judge things. And it's like, oh, I can do this because of this ability. But while that is true, that's still not a great tactic. You really should be sticking with your party. You really should be giving them the flanking bonus so that they also benefit from the flat-footed bonus. And so while, again, I think this is fine, the scoundrel concept, what does the scoundrel even give you? It gives you a better feint in combat. So it doesn't really make your character a silver-tongued devil. What makes your character a silver-tongued devil is the way you role play your character, the skills that you choose, the skill feats that you choose. And so don't get so priced into these rackets that you feel like I need to be a scoundrel racket in order to be a scoundrel rogue. Oh, I want to have good charisma. Okay, you don't need charisma to be your key ability score. I'm telling you, mathematically, the game, you're a lot better off with the dexterity as your key ability score. That doesn't mean that you can't have a 14 or even a 16 in your charisma and take a bunch of social skills and take a bunch of cool feats. But you don't need to be a scoundrel to be a scoundrel, because all scoundrel is giving you is when you feint in combat, it makes them flat-footed a little bit longer, Okay. Ruffian. This is probably the build that I think is probably the second most popular, maybe the third most popular, maybe Mastermind might be more popular, but, the Ruffian actually has a really cool, interesting concept about it, by the way. Ruffians can deal sneak attack damage with any simple weapon in addition to the sneak attack class features. This means that Ruffians don't have to use a weapon which is agile or finesse. It has to be a simple weapon, but it can be agile or finesse. Now, what we don't know is in the new Pathfinder Remastered, when rogues gain martial weapon proficiency, will Ruffians be able to do sneak attack with martial weapons? I would assume so, but we'll see what they do. So again, a Ruffian has the advantage that they can use different types of weapons. And why would you want to use a different type of weapon? Well, the main reason you'd want to use a different type of weapon is because Ruffians, the only class in the game that can do this, when you critically succeed in an attack roll with a simple weapon and they are flat-footed, you can apply the critical specialization effect of the weapon you're wielding. You get to do that from level 1. Every other class in the game has to wait until level 5. You can do it from level 1. So that is pretty cool. It's a nice little benefit. And because you can use simple weapons, you do get a little bit of extra options with the type of critical specialization effects available to you. Gabriel's pointing out that you could take a long spear with reach, which is pretty cool. Not probably what I think of when I think of a ruffian. I'm definitely like the idea of a rogue using a hammer, breaking up kneecaps. That number one, that feels very ruffian-like. Number two, it's really nice because they get their critical spec early, and then you can potentially be knocking people prone, which is obviously great for you. It's great for your party. It's great for everybody involved. But because you're going to be melee attacking and you're not going to be using agile finesse weapons, potentially, the ruffian can choose strength as their key ability score, and they also gain medium armor. The problem with medium armor is, and I'm just going to put this as a comparison, a thief rogue with an 18 dexterity, and light armor is going to have 5 points of armor class from armor plus dex. 1 from their light armor, 4 from their dexterity, which is the special 5 that we're looking for out of armor. But they're also going to be doing +4 to hit with their finesse weapons or their ranged weapons. And they're going to be doing +4 to damage thanks to their thievery ability, which lets them add their dexterity modifier to damage rolls whenever they attack with a finesse weapon. So this means that in one stat, they've taken care of all the problems. Now, for a ruffian rogue, sure, you could put an 18 into strength. That's going to go to your attack roll. That's going to go to your damage roll. It is not going to go to your reflex. It is not going to go to your stealth. And yes, you'll have dexterity. You get medium armor. But medium armor is still going to require oftentimes 14 in dexterity just to be able to get to that magic number 5. Most medium armor is worth 2 or 3 points of armor. So you need a 14 or a 16 dexterity in order to sort of complete the magic 5. But this means that now just to be able to get there, you have to have an 18 in a key stat strength, which is not as good as an 18 in dexterity because it's not as used. It's not a saving throw stat. And you still have to put boosts into another one. Floyd says, isn't the best medium armor 12 dex cap? It might be, Floyd. I don't know if you can start with it, though. Let's see. Yeah, chainmail. Okay, you could probably start with chainmail. All right, fine. 12 dex. I will go with. But although, Floyd, chainmail is noisy, which means you always get that penalty to your stealth check. So that also kind of sucks when your character's trying to use stealth, right? Breastplate's probably too powerful. I don't know. Or too costly. What do you get? 150 gold or 150 silver? Breastplate is 8 gold. It's pretty expensive. Yeah, breastplate. Breastplate's ideal, and you'll get there eventually. But again, a thief rogue can go 18 dex, 10 strength, and be totally fine. A ruffian rogue is gonna put 18 strength, but also is probably going to want to buff up their dex anyways, because they're going to want it for reflex saves. They're going to want, because remember too, as a rogue, you get evasion. Even if you're a ruffian, you still get evasion. Evasion only triggers if you pass the save. You have to pass so that you have, and which upgrades it to a critical success. So you are more incentivized to have a good reflex save because you want to be able to take advantage of that early. You get at level 7 evasion bonus in order to completely avoid the damage that you would take from a breath weapon or a fireball or some sort of AoE spell. And dexterity is still going to be a really important skill for you for across many across many different skills. So even as a ruffian, you are still going to be in a situation where you're going to want to be pumping your dex. If you're a thief rogue, you almost don't need strength ever. There might be a world where you want to get your athletics higher, and so you end up putting points into it. But for the most part, you can just completely ignore it. So, but I do think the ruffian is fine. Mastermind, on the other hand, has some problems to me, which is having int as your key ability score doesn't help you attack anything. At least the ruffian can start with an 18 strength and have a +4 to hit. The thief can have an 18 dexterity and have a +4 to hit with a finesse weapon. The mastermind, if they end up with a 16 or a 14 dex or something, that's great and all. That's cool. They can recall knowledge and make things flat-footed. They're going to miss all the time because they're not maxed out. The math in this game is very, very tight. And yes, will you auto lose the game if your bonus to hit is less than what it should be? No, but let's be clear here. Missing sucks. Missing is boring. It's exciting to hit. It feels good for your party. It feels good for you. It moves the game along. It makes the combats quicker. You think combat's a slog? Make sure your character has the highest attack roll possible, so that way you can actually hit things and kill things. So it is. William Brandis is saying, wait, hold up. Shadram, by the way, throwing out the double math is tight. Oh, by the way, Shadram, you had given me something and I might have missed it. Oh, yeah. Shadram had a member chat a little bit ago. Looking forward to watching the Knights play all the games and continue talking about them. Studio looks fantastic. Well, thank you, Shadram. I appreciate the support. Thank you for continuing to support us through multiple different platforms. It means the world to me. It means the world to Bob and Aaron and everybody associated with us. So really appreciate you being here, and thanks you for the support. All right. So William Brand is saying, wait, hold up. Read this mastermind description. Why does this exist, or the investigator also exists? That's exactly right. I even said, I was like, the mastermind should give, int things to attack roll. And people said, well, that'll step on the investigator's toe. The investigator didn't exist when this came out. And now that the investigator does exist, why would you ever go to this? I think fundamentally, you just have better options. And if you really want to do this thing, this int kind of rogue thing, you should be an investigator. So, it's just going to work out way better for you. And then lastly, you get Eldritch Trickster, which is essentially a racket that gives you a free archetype feat. Not free archetype. It gives you one free archetype feat, is what this is essentially doing. It lets you choose a multi-class archetype that gives you access to spellcasting, and you get the dedication feat as a bonus feat, and that's it. So yeah. Also, they throw in this, if you really want to completely destroy your character, they have this. You can choose the spellcasting ability score for the multi-class archetype you chose as your key ability score. So if your rogue is the Eldritch Trickster and you pick up, the sorcerer multi-class archetype, you could change your key stat from dexterity to charisma. You could take charisma to 18. So you'll be an 18 and you'll have 2 cantrips and your save will be great because you'll be trained. And you won't be able to function otherwise as a rogue. It kind of, I don't know why this racket exists. They wrote this book knowing that their archetype system, which is awesome, exists. If you want to be an Eldritch Trickster, just be a rogue and then take class feats at 2 and 4 and 6 from sorcerer or wizard multiclass. Or multiclass archetype feats. That's how that whole system is supposed to work. They designed a fantastic system in archetypes. They fixed a lot of the multiclassing issues. They fixed a lot of these weird corner case issues with archetypes. And then they didn't use it. And then they ignored it. And we got Mastermind and we got Eldritch Trickster. I don't know why this exists, because the ruffian fundamentally changes the rogue. I mean, your critical specialization triggers differently. You get medium armor proficiency. You can sneak attack with simple weapons, even if they don't have the finesse ability. I mean, the Eldritch Trickster is just giving you a multi-class dedication feat. So I'm not a big fan of this. Now, I know people are gonna say, oh, there's some really cool feats that you can take. Yeah, why don't they just make those available to everybody? That's my thing. I don't like making a racket or a subclass good because of exclusivity is, in my opinion, not the best design. Because then, number one, it makes you, as the player who chooses, say, the Eldritch Trickster racket, feel kind of priced into choosing those feats. You say, I kind of need those feats to even function, and I kind of chose this racket so that I could get access to those feats. And that means that when you get to level up, instead of getting a cool buffet of options, wow, there are 5 really exciting, cool feats here for me to take. A lot of people go, okay, well, I'm going to take the one that's for my racket. I'm going to take the one that's for my subclass. I'm just going to, I'll take the one that is for me. And it feels like from level 1 of the game, you've now kind of priced yourself into the entire progression, and you're kind of robbing yourself of that ability to sort of, discover your character instead of just having it written out, Badoom says psychic dedication is good for this because it's kind of just stronger than the other caster dedications. Badoom, psychic dedication is one of the best dedications in the game. In our Northern Reaches game, there were a lot of very powerful multi-classed psychic characters that combined things like Magus's Spell Strike or Arcane Archer's Spell Shot, along with psychic dedication and access to imaginary weapons, amped, to do a lot of damage. Shadram says there's only one feat. I thought there was like 2 feats, Shadram. So yeah, I'll believe you. And it's not that great. So again, I think fundamentally that you should really only be looking at the ruffian or the thief. And if you want to be a scoundrel or you want to be a mastermind or you want to be an Eldritch Trickster, that's what archetypes, class feats, and skill feats are for. They're going to let you fill in and make that kind of, character a reality. You don't have to just, take the thing to be the thing. Chris Hansen coming in with a big $10 super chat. Thank you, Chris. Being very generous tonight, sir. And you are, you know what? You're going to get a strong, Chris.
I am strong. Strong. Strong.
Chris says, I always imagine the mastermind making someone flat-footed. They shout out the target's name, spouse's name, kid's name, and threatening that he knows where they live. Yeah, if the mastermind was like full Liam Neeson and they had like this full psychological warfare, here's what I would like to see, Chris. Make the mastermind like the ruffian, where it kind of swaps the rogue's dexterity-based abilities for int-based abilities. Now, the ruffian doesn't do it perfectly. Like I said, I think the thief still outperforms. But if you gave the mastermind the ability to use their intelligence for their armor class instead of dexterity, or attack with their intelligence, now suddenly it feels cool and it feels weird and it feels different. And you're doing something that feels appropriate to the genre. And more importantly, you are fundamentally reshaping the game. You are bending the rules, breaking them in some cases. And so it being this sort of defined element characteristic of your character makes more sense. I mean, in theory, you can retrain your racket, which retraining things like that always just, what is going on here? Is it like the Matrix? But we have a limited hard drive space? Did I just forget how to be a mastermind and now suddenly I'm a ruffian? That one always trips me up. I think it's really funny. Floyd says sneak attacking with spells when you have a low proficiency is a terrible idea. Floyd, bringing up an instant, remember, I've said this before. It is the case that innovation, right, sometimes lags behind in different categories. And so we innovate over here, but over here we haven't innovated as much. Eldritch Trickster as a concept existed in Pathfinder 1. It existed in 3.5. The cool thing about 3.5 is that by having access to spells, you had access to, yes, touch spells. Okay, touch spells, number one, use your dexterity, which was great for a rogue. And number two, touch spells attacked touch AC. And touch AC in Pathfinder 1 and in 3rd edition was ridiculously low on almost every single creature. And so it allowed a rogue who had access to these magical touch spells to do sneak attacks with their spells and have a very high degree of accuracy that they would not have with their melee weapons because the touch AC was that much lower. And touch attacks used, even spell touch attacks, used your dexterity bonus to determine if you hit with the ray or whatever you were shooting. That was really cool. Well, they got rid of touch AC in Pathfinder 2. They decided this can create a lot of swingy, weird game imbalances. Cool. They got rid of it. But then you still have the Eldritch Trickster. And so now the Eldritch Trickster goes like, it's like, well, okay, but they can't sneak attack anymore. And their dexterity is bad, but what am I going to do? Max my charisma, which doesn't do anything else for me. And I'm going to be a second-rate caster with max charisma. Why wouldn't I have just been a sorcerer then? So that, again, you just get into this weird problem where it's like, what are we even trying to do here? Right. Sovalis, which I don't know if you meant Sovalis. Are you named after the 3rd edition iconic ranger? Because the 3rd edition Player's Handbook's iconic ranger was named Sovalis, I think. If that's the case, very cool. Ancient Elf bugs me even more than Eldritch Trickster. Yeah, Ancient Elf has some problems, but they are. That's sick. Nice. That's some nerd cred right there. Okay, when you know the iconics names from 3rd edition. Let's see. Can we do it as a chat? No, we can't. No one can look it up. That you're cheating. Okay, I'll see what I can do, and then if I miss one, you guys can fill it in. Okay. Barbarian was Krusk. He's a half-orc barbarian. The Bard was a little gnome. No, it wasn't. I don't remember the Bard. All I can think of now is the Paizo Bard. Yes, Aaron. The Cleric was Hozan. He was a Cleric of Palor, human Cleric of Palor. There were 2 iconic fighters, technically. There was Redgar, who was human, and then there was Tordek, who was a Dwarven fighter. Yes, Killraven. Devis, he was a half-elf bard. Boom, it popped into my mind. I can see him now. The Ranger was Sovalis. The Monk was Ember. Ember was the monk. She was a black woman, I think, where she had like almost a small top on and a quarterstaff in her hand. I think her name was Ember. I could be wrong. Yes, Lydia was the halfling rogue. Hennet was the sorcerer. The paladin was a woman with dark hair, short, wearing golden armor-ish, bronze armor. The monk's name was Ember. What was the paladin? Was it like Alana or Alona? No, that can't possibly be right. The paladin's name escapes me. And then we had the wizard, who I think was a human wizard. No, it was Miali. Of course, it was Miali. The elven wizard with the kind of green leathery armor. Yeah. I do not remember the paladin's name. So that's the one that I really shit the bed on. That one I don't remember at all. Sorry. All right. Anyways, that was a fun little diversion. So I don't want to go into the feats here too much, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the rogue build. Okay. Now, I think some people have mentioned this in chat already, but I think it is worth, it's worth talking about and really asking the question, Alhandra was the paladin's name. Very nice. Really asking ourselves is if this is actually problematic, or not. And, what I mean by that is having these feats in the game a problem. Okay. So as a rogue, you're going to get a feat at level 1. And there's some good ones in here. Nimble Dodge is, I think, a fantastic feat, which allows you to use your reaction from level 1, which is, again, you get 4 actions a turn, right? You get 4 actions a turn. You get 3 actions and a reaction. And if you want to maximize your action economy, you should be looking for ways to basically use your reaction each round. Another reason why I'm a big fan of aiding, but aiding at level 1, 2, 3, 4, not great, not good. You're going to miss. You have a chance of critically failing and ruining their attack. So having access to, this is another reason why I like champions at low level, because they get that sick reaction right from the beginning of the game. Fighters get attacks of opportunity right from the beginning of the game. And rogues can pick up Nimble Dodge at level 1. And, well, quite frankly, you're going to be getting attacked a lot. So having access to this feat, I think, is a really, really strong option. I also think if you do end up multi-classing, especially if you're using free archetype and you end up going into the rogue dedication, picking up this is a great option. That being said, if you're playing in a dungeon campaign, I think Trap Finder is really, really great for the main reason. And again, we always looking to increase action economy here. Remember, when you're in exploration mode, your character is typically only capable of doing sort of one thing at a time. Your character can be creeping around, staying hidden, but then they aren't searching for traps. your character can be casting detect magic, but then they can't have their shield raised and ready for defense. Trap Finder gives you some bonuses that you can use against traps. But the main thing it also lets you do is, even if you're not searching for traps, you still get a check to find traps as if you were searching. So having Trap Finder allows your rogue to avoid notice so that you can maybe start a fight hidden, use your dexterity or use your stealth for initiative, trigger your surprise attack class feature, which allows you to treat creatures as flat-footed if you go first for them, if you use stealth for your initiative. But you can do all those things that avoid noticing allows you to do, but you can also still be searching for traps, which is something that I think a lot of people want rogues to be able to do. Now, that being said,
Rope Mimic tip $10.
You know, Rope Mimic tip $10. Rope Mimic, sorry, I don't know if there was a message there, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. Helping me pay off those braces, buddy. Appreciate you. Thank you very, very, very much. RPG. I don't actually know that you've been. I don't Rope Mimic. I don't know where you've been. I don't think I've seen you in a while, but good to have you here, buddy. -401 says free archetype is basically standard. Not using it is the alternate rule. It seems. I actually have come around 100% on this. When the game first started, I thought free archetype, you got to use it. Now we just started kind of a redo of, we kind of picked back up our Abomination Vault campaign. We ended after book 1, and now we're picking it back up to go back into book 2, back 3. And some people kind of rebuilt and retweaked their characters a little bit to try something different. And we're not using free archetype. I think we all got blinded by the car op. I think we all got blinded by being min-maxers. I think archetype is interesting because it Pathfinder 2 truly does not require your feats in order to function. And like you could just get your class features and your character will perform admirably. You don't need your rogue class feats, or you don't need your sorcerer class feats in order to be a good sorcerer. And so by getting rid of free archetype, or by, not having free archetype, it means that people actually are making a sacrifice. And having played several high-level campaigns now in Pathfinder 2, the number of characters that kind of all feel like they're the same at high level, because like all the sorcerers picked up champion. So now it's like, hell, my fighter, level 20 fighter, free archetype, had champion dedication, lay on hands, champion reaction, and so bumped charisma, and picked up sorcerer dedication, and had, 26 spell slots or something crazy, right? Like, I don't know what it was, like 18 spell slots. So it's like, and that character was a fighter. And it was like, and you're doing kind of what the paladin or the champion should be doing. And you're also kind of doing and you could use all your scrolls, and you're casting haste, and you're casting you're casting true strike, you're casting true target. Like, what is going on? What is happening right now? I think it just makes it too easy. And I know people don't like to make tough decisions. The reason they like free archetype is because they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be like, oh, look at this. We can use our class feat to take a rogue feat, but you could take anything. Yeah, but what if I could take the rogue feat and take something else? Honestly, it's just, free archetype really exacerbates the problem of every class being done better as a fighter multi-class. Absolutely, Frostjack. And we'll talk about that when we eventually get to the fighter. But anyways, I think that you have some really cool options at level 1. You'll notice I'm kind of skipping over the APG ones, but Twin Fate is pretty good as well. Now, here's the problem with the game. Quick Draw is pretty cool if you want to do that kind of, throw something in round 1 and stab them in round 2, or, shoot them with a bow round 1, drop it, move, pull it out, stab them. Quick Draw is pretty cool. Mobility's not bad. The problem with the game is at level 6, let's find it. You already know what it is. Your character gets gang up. Now, everything that I was talking about before, I mean, your character is entirely built around getting flat-footed. Even if you're a mastermind, or even if you're a, whatever, a mastermind, a scoundrel. It's like, oh, the scoundrels get better at fainting. The mastermind is recall knowledge can make, you're all still just trying to make the person flat-footed. And my contention is it's better and easier to just move next to the creature and then make it flat-footed. Now, before you had to flank, but with gang up, you don't even have to do that. Because when you gang up, all you have to do is have an ally be able to make melee attacks against it. So now you don't even have to do anything. Once you pick up gang up, it is almost unthinkable, unless, like, I don't know, everyone in your party is dead, in which case you should be running away, that you're not going to have your target be flat-footed at all times. And so there's no need to do fainting, and there's no need to do recall knowledges to make them flat-footed. All you have to do is move next to the guy that your other party members are attacking. End of story. There might be some weird party that no one else is a melee character, in which case you should really reconsider your party composition. But now, obviously, there's still benefits. If you're flanking, your ally gets the benefit of it as well. But let's also be clear here that you get the most benefit out of it, because not only do you get that, lower armor class that you have to hack, but your sneak attack damage, your critical specialization effects, your debilitation effects, all trigger off of attacking a flat-footed target. So it is absolutely critical. If you are not attacking a flat-footed target, don't even bother making the attack roll. Try to do something else. Aid. I don't know. It's just not worth it. So gang up makes it ridiculously easy for you to essentially make all of your attacks sneak attacks. And that's at level 6. Then at level 8, we get, come on, load it up. We get Opportune Backstab. Now, Opportune Backstab is a reaction. We know reactions are good. They allow us to really maximize our action potential. Sneak attacking is good. And rogues, because they are sneak attacking oftentimes with agile weapons, are going to have a lower multiple attack penalty than other characters. But we know that attacking with multiple attack penalty is bad. In fact, even attacking with the first multiple attack penalty, -5 or -4 for an agile rogue, can really, really hurt your attack chances and absolutely kill your critical hit chances. So again, being able to attack with no multiple attack penalty is the goal. And this is part of the reason why Attack of Opportunity is so powerful. It's not just that Attack of Opportunity is cool and good because it's like, oh, I could do some extra damage. When you trigger an Attack of Opportunity, multiple attack penalty does not apply. So even if you attacked once or twice in your prior turn, if you make an Attack of Opportunity, no multiple attack penalty. So with Opportune Backstab, our rogue has the ability to move into melee, make with their ally, maybe their barbarian buddy or their fighter, pal. Doesn't matter if they're flanking or not. The creature is now flat-footed to me. That means I'm going to sneak attack them with no multiple attack penalty. Awesome. I'd love to be able to do that again. Crit, to double my sneak attack damage, do my critical specialization effect. That'd be great. So now I have Opportune Backstab. And in the next round, my barbarian ally, my monk ally, my fighter ally hits my enemy in melee. A trigger. A creature within your melee reach is hit by a melee attack from one of your allies. I told you we would get back to this, but this feat is part of the reason why melee rogues are very, very, very powerful. Because even if your character is a ranged rogue, this ability is not going to be available to you. And this allows you to make a strike against the triggering creature. It's essentially an Attack of Opportunity, but instead of being triggered by the enemy moving, it's triggered by the enemy being hit. Now, will this trigger every single turn? No. But if you have multiple people in your party who are attacking the same target in you in melee, chances are fairly good that they are going to land a hit, at least one of them. And if they do, you get to make a free attack that doesn't have the multiple attack penalty, which ultimately brings us to the final piece de resistance of the quote unquote core rogue build, which is if we go to level 12, we see preparation, which came out in the Advanced Player's Handbook or Advanced Player's Guide. Now, preparation is a single action to basically gain a reaction on your off turn. And it's got flourish, so you can only do it once per turn. And at first you might think, well, a reaction isn't as good as an action, right? So I'm trading down. No, because remember, we have opportune backstab. And the preparation allows us to now have 2 reactions, one of which has to be used for a rogue reaction. And luckily, the opportune backstab has the rogue trait. So that means that our character, our rogue, can now move in, attack in melee, trigger a sneak attack, prepare with their 3rd action. Then on my allies' turns, one of them hits, I attack with a reaction using opportune backstab, triggering sneak attack again because I'm still in melee with my ally. So I've now done sneak attack twice with 2 multiple attack penalties of 0. My multiple attack penalty is now still 0. Another ally hits, or that same ally hits again. Now I get a 2nd opportune backstab because I prepared. And so now I have made 3 attacks with no multiple attack penalty in 1 round. And I can do that every single round of the combat. There's no check. There's no check to be made. I don't have to feint them. I don't have to recall knowledge them. I don't have to do any of that stuff. The only thing I have to do is attack. And you know what? We're going to be doing that anyways. And if God help you, if your attack bonus isn't as high as it could possibly be. So yeah, I mean, you can still miss, but that's the life. That's the life of the game. These 3 feats really, in my opinion, push the rogue into a really very high level of combat performance. That is, quite frankly, a sight to behold. I will say that. All right, let me catch up here with the chat here. Aaron says that they're going to be making free archetype a theme for their next campaign. I think that's a brilliant idea. Aaron, if I was going to use free archetype in any future Pathfinder 2 campaigns, it would only be to sort of reinforce a theme or a core concept. It would be a curated list, a tailored list. I really actually like that. Yes, it is very appealing at low level because it turns out people just want to have stuff to do. And despite all the things that you get in Pathfinder 2, I still don't feel like you have a lot to do. The game to me really becomes more compelling around level 6 or 8 because now I've got 4 or 5 skill class feats. I've picked up a general feat or 2, an ancestry feat or 2. My casters have a couple levels of spells, not just like, oh, I got 2 spells for the day and then it's electric arc until the cows come home. So free archetype kind of lets you feel like you're getting into it a bit earlier. Sap Mac apparently called it. I assume maybe the rogue feats that we were going to talk about. Let's see here. Yeah, rogue, make your Magus move into flank. Right, like I got a lot of stuff to do here. You go ahead and do it. Rule of Cool says, can all feats be like that? Well, that's the other problem about this. It's like there is no denying that feats like opportune backstab, okay, or preparation are fun. They make you feel like you are manipulating and interacting with the game mechanics in a very satisfying way. Because rather than, a lot of times there's a problem in Pathfinder 2 where the game makes you jump through hoops. You have to spend actions. You have to make checks in order to just do something as well as everyone else can do it, but you're doing it in a weird way. And so the game goes, so you have to pay the price of having to jump through these hoops and hurdles. What's cool about this is you are actually getting an advantage. And, the hurdles here, to be clear, are, I need to be with my ally. They need to be attacking. I want my allies to attack. So it creates this cool tactical fun element and interplay between my characters, but it also means that me and my allies, we're all on the same page. I want them to hit so that I can attack. They want to hit because they want to hit. So now it's like, okay, we're all on the same page. Yes, as a party, you all want your barbarian to hit. But now you have a personal vested interest in the barbarian attacking. And I don't want to go off onto like too much of a tangent here, but one of the things that I always say about TTRPGs that is a problem, especially in cyclical based initiative games like D20 games, is I don't care what's happening. Bob's playing the barbarian. It's not my turn. It's his turn. He's off doing something, fighting. I might not even be paying attention. And not because I'm a rude, disrespectful asshole. I'm not talking about like I'm pulling out my phone and I'm scrolling Twitter. I might be looking at my character sheet, trying to figure out what my conditions are, maybe start thinking about my next move or my next plan. God forbid I'm a spellcaster. Feats like Opportune Backstab make me have to pay attention to my fellow player's turn. It makes me want to interact with my fellow players. Hey, Bob, can you sudden charge over to my guy so that you can attack him? And if you hit, I'll get an extra sneak attack. That would be awesome, right? It forces you to be a more interactive, tactical team player. And I love feats like this. And then on top of it, it's powerful as hell. So you're getting this fun team building aspect, but you're also getting something for it. You're getting the power. And that feels really, really good. And it feels really, really satisfying. And I think, now, what is the downside of this? Not to go all taking 20 on us, but it can create, patterns of play. It can create, dare I say, rotations, right? Because as a rogue, you suddenly start realizing, well, I mean, I'm going to attack every turn and I'm going to prepare every turn and then I'm going to opportunity backstab every turn. And you're like, I could do something else, but wow, would it be not as effective? And the problem with these really cool, interesting, fun, compelling, engaging mechanics is they can suck all the air out of the room. And you suddenly are left with this horrible decision to make. Do I do the thing that is smart and effective and useful and being a team player, or do I do the thing that I want to do that isn't nearly as good? I said I wasn't going to say illusion of choice, but you all said it. So I'm just going to, we'll just leave it there. So again, I'm not saying that the feats like this do that, but I am saying that, they can create those problems because they're good, let's see here. Every see a class feat that isn't fun, that's because the rogue class stole the fun feats for itself. I mean, it is absolutely the case, Badoom, that some classes have horrible feats. I don't know. It is the case that some classes just have absolutely terrible feats. Fighters get a lot of fun ones. Rogues get a lot of fun ones. Sorcerers get some pretty fun ones. But man, some of the clerics feats, in my opinion, champion feats might be the worst in the game. If we're being honest here, champion feats might actually be the worst. Chadram, if you had two rogues in melee, could they chain their reactions off of one another to do 5 attacks at full bonus? Chadram, they absolutely could. Yeah, they absolutely could. I mean, they have to keep hitting Chadram, but they absolutely could. Damien also only uses free archetype as a theme, no multi-classing allowed. Sapmac says, I had a thief rogue that had those feats and monk multi-class, but not using free archetype. Wants to make sure that everyone knows it was legit. Move, flurry, prep, 2 reactions. Right. Absolutely great. And what's nice about what Sapmac is describing there is they're able to move in, trigger the flat-footed because of gang up, and then flurry is allowing them to make 2 attacks. So they get 2 bites at the apple in order to try to land at least that first sneak attack. Because with a sneak attack, the difference between hitting and not hitting is huge. So getting 2 bites at the apple is for one action is really, really sick. And then they prep, and then they get 2 reactions at 0 map, even though they just flurried on their previous turn. So that is pretty sweet. No doubt. Satmac. Okay, Satmac, you were one of the people mentioning gang up. Yeah. Gang up is really, really powerful. Beowulf coming at me with an unrelated. By By the way, folks, we're going into the 9 o'clock hour. I'm sure there might be some questions, or people might have some, conversations or questions they want to ask. I'm going to answer Beowulf's question here. We do not have to go tonight at 9. I am getting up early tomorrow because I'm going to go see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 at like the 9:30 a.m. or 10 a.m. show, because I go and see with my two buddies who are always very... they like to see the early shows. So anyways, but we can go a little late tonight. So I want to spend some time. I want to hear from you. I want to get your thoughts and comments and questions. I want to make sure the chat has an opportunity to interact with them. And if you do have your thoughts or comments or questions, let me know. I want to say thank you, everybody. We pretty much have hit our Pathfinder 2 super chat goal. So maybe $5 more will put us over that. And my braces goal is a little lagging there, but that's okay. You guys are showing PF2 the love tonight, and I love to see it. All right, Beowulf says, unrelated, but what games do people think have the best social combat and or mechanics? I'm looking for mechanics that I can port and lift into my home games. Well, Beowulf, that is a very complex question. It depends what you mean by social combat and mechanics, because in my mind, Pathfinder 2 kind of has social combat mechanics. You meet a creature. Remember, you can only make an impression on one character at a time. So you could imagine a battle map, but maybe it's not rounds, it's minutes, and it's maybe a ball, or it's a king's counselor chamber. It's a debate. It's a war council, and but there's time. And instead of each round being 6 seconds, like it would be in a D&D game, each round might represent several minutes of intercourse or dialogue between all the different people. And you don't have time. You can't just let the charisma character, because you say, look, you have 6 rounds to try to change the king's mind. And so now the characters are running around. They're using diplomacy to make impression, to try to change people to helpful or friendly. And then they can make request actions in the following up round, or they can change someone to helpful, and then their ally can come in and do that. They can bone mow somebody. They can intimidate somebody to make them frightened, which will make their will save lower so that it's easier to influence them with diplomacy, right? There's actually a lot there that you can actually use just in PF2. So, and there's skill feats that support most of what I just described. So it actually is kind of interesting and fun. Daniel Ross loves free archetype because it gives that additional layer of flavor and flexibility to flesh out your character of your backstory, and an added bonus to why your character isn't an average person. Yeah, but your class does that though, right? I think part of the problem I have with free archetype is class concept as a D20 already is about creating a niche and saying, this is who I am. I am the rogue. I am the fighter. I'm the barbarian. Free archetype, I think, waters that down a lot. I think if you have a smaller party, it can be useful, but yeah, I think it is a problem. Edward says, you're exactly right about how this feat, and I'm talking about opportune backstab, incentivizes players to be interested in other players' turns. I would love an RPG that has this kind of thing baked in for everyone. Absolutely, Edward. In fact, in my past Pathfinder 1 3.5 D&D days, I would create and homebrew a lot of systems that were designed to exactly and expressly increase that, that kind of paying attention and the ability to sort of jump in and say, oh, I'm going to give you a bonus, or, oh, that effect, that triggers something off of me. So now I get to do something cool as well. Because yeah, I want people paying attention, and not because they're being polite. I look, people doing the right thing is great. But when you give them a motivation, when you give them a reward, when you give them something they want to, it makes it a lot easier and everything goes a lot smoother. Because now it's not just like, hey, I know you have nothing to do on the barbarian's turn, but don't be rude. I want you to pay attention to their turn. And you will, because you're trying to be nice. But the fact of the matter is, it works a lot better when you are actually like trying to see, oh, did he do something that triggers off of me? Or is there a reaction I have that I can give to them that will trigger that? It makes, I think, for a much better gameplay experience all around the board. Damien says, Champion is the best chassis for multiclassing without free archetype. Yeah, because all the feats are terrible. If you're playing a champion, you should almost never pick champion feats. Cleric stole all the cool feats from champion, yes. See, Damien says storytelling, aka the Chronicles of Darkness, aka the New World of Darkness, has a great social combat system, but I don't see it porting well to D20. Yeah, that's fair enough. Victory points and skill challenges are also quite good. Yes, victory point systems can work. Cedric says, I feel like social encounters either needs to be a full system or nothing. It's in a kind of awkward middle ground. I don't mind it too much, but it's a little awkward. Well, Cedric, there's a reason for that. The reason is because Pathfinder 2 is an action adventure exploration combat game. The whole point of the game is to be these larger than life characters who are, battling and fighting their way through, hordes of monsters and evildoers and villains, right? It's a pulpy game. The mechanics for social encounters are deliberately designed to be quick and snappy and resolved because it's like moving on. Yes, this is a part of our story, but this, Indiana Jones isn't going to take 20, 30 minutes out of an Indiana Jones movie to get into this like lengthy debate about whether or not, no, like that's not how those movies work. Pathfinder 2 is more like an Indiana Jones movie than, some sort of drama filled, gripping thriller. And so the mechanics actually fit the game really well. The problem is if you don't want to play that style of game, and I like Pathfinder too. I like Dungeons and Dragons. People have been misled. They've been misled by the powers that be at Wizards of the Coast and at Paizo and by content creators or by their game master, their dungeon master. They have been misled. Negative. Enjoy making dinner. Hopefully it's tasty. Thank you for stopping by. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for being a supporter of the channel. And we love to have you here. The reason why the players have been misled is because D&D and Pathfinder 2 is not the RPG that can do it all. D&D and RPG, despite what it says in the book about you could use this game for anything, tell any story, that is wrong. That is just patently wrong. The game works best doing specific things. If you go against those things, you're going to encounter frictional resistance because the mechanics are not going to align with the player's goals. And when I say players, I just mean like everybody at the table who is there to play the game. Pathfinder 2 is not a game that is designed to support that kind of style of play. And so the mechanics are designed to kind of just get right through it. Hey, I mean, at a fundamental level, you just had an awesome combat. And now the party, it's Final Fantasy 1. I'm dating myself here. It's Final Fantasy 1. You've just beat Garland at the Temple of Fiends. And you go back to the king and you say, we need to save the world. You need to build a bridge so that we can go explore the rest of the world and save it. And in Pathfinder 2 terms, it's like, oh, cool. You just had a really cool boss fight. And now the GM has a really cool, awesome dungeon/wilderness set of encounters set up north of Corneria. Okay, you go to the king. Cool. Make an impression. You succeed. Request. Build a bridge. You succeed. And now the bridge is built. Cue intro music and the game begins. The problem is that Pathfinder 2, it just wants to skip that. Make a couple die rolls, move on. Get to the next combat. Get to the next cool, exciting location full of danger and treasure and dread and cool monsters. And like that is what the game is really trying to push towards. So the mechanics are designed to sort of skip over those other things. All right, what else we got here? Rule of Cool says, I'm thinking of just taking PBTA stuff for social, completely ignoring what P2 provides. I don't know that PBTA really has social combat though. Not. I mean, it depends on what PBTA game you're talking about. I mean, there's like the parlay move from Dungeon World as an example actually kind of functions a lot like the request move from Pathfinder 2. So it actually might not. It depends on what PBTA game you're talking about. We can maybe talk about it. Let's see. Mighty Dave says, what's weird is some feats and rules strongly imply Paizo thinks there is already a strong social combat system. Yeah, you are absolutely correct, Mighty Dave. And it is a little weird. because there are elements of this game where it goes like some of those skill feats where people are going to be like improving their ability to, again, I cannot stress this enough. It's in the rules of the game. When you make an impression on somebody, you can only target a single person. If you want to be able to influence and change the minds of, say, a small table of people, let alone an entire bar or a town square of folks, then you need the group impression feat. And even if you have the group impression, so let's say you went and you took the group impression feat, well, then you can make an impression against 2 targets instead of 1. It isn't until you're legendary at level 13 that you can do 25 at once. So you could probably do a whole bar, but a crowded town square, forget about it. You know, why is the game going into that level of granularity over something that the game seems to want to just skip over? Yeah. So I am not criticizing you, Badum, but this advice gets thrown out all the time, and I think it is a bad advice. So Badum is saying you could just increase the DC to influence a large group without invalidating the feat, because that's the thing people don't want to do. They're like, well, if I just let the players influence the whole crowd, then no one would ever take the group impression skill feat, and we need to make group impression skill feat useful, so I'll just raise the DC. The problem with raising the DC, Badum, is you're punishing the behavior. You're actually you're discouraging the behavior. You are telling the player whether they, especially if you don't tell them that you're increasing the DC, then it's really, really nefarious. But you're basically saying, I will let you do this, but you're going to be punished for doing it. So that creates an incentive to just not do it. And while it makes sense from a simulationist point, from a gameplay perspective, I think it creates bad outcomes. And that's the only reason why I'm very hesitant to ever say to people, oh, just increase the DC as a way to punish people. Because to be clear, that is how they used to do it in Pathfinder 1, which is how they did it in 3rd edition D&D. Something like 2-weapon fighting gave you, if you fought with 2 weapons, you took like a -6 penalty with your primary hand and a -10 penalty with your offhand. What taking the feats did was eliminate the penalty. But the fact of the matter is nobody in Pathfinder 1 or Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition dual wielded at all unless they had those feats, because the penalties made it pointless to even try to play it. So if you're going to put especially in a game with math as tight as Pathfinder 2, if you're going to increase the DCs or use higher DCs to sort of punish people for not having a very niche feat, I think it just leads to bad outcomes. Beowulf says, yeah, I think that's my problem. I've been trying to use D20 systems to play games. Oh, I thought you were saying they're just not designed to play games. I've been trying to use D20 systems to play games that they're not designed for. Beowulf, I think that's a lot of people's problems. In fact, if you will indulge me, chat, I want to read something today, which I thought was particularly well said on the Reddits. In r/RPG, where where a poll was made about fudging, and GMs, would you as a player, or it was actually asking players, if you found out your GM was fudging, would you be upset? Would you leave the game? Would you be mad about it? And surprisingly, the people who answered the poll said, no, I really wouldn't care that much. I would play normally and would remain excited even after finding out they were fudging. But what I really liked was the top comment to this. And I'm going to read this really quick for us. It says, this is something that seems to be only prevalent within the 5e community. And I think within the Pathfinder 2 community a little bit, but it's more in the 5e community. And for good reason. 5e's community wants to tell stories that 5e is not designed for. 5e, by default, has combat as a regular occurrence, but losing combat means the game ends. Because if you lose a fight, except in some very rare cases where the enemies are fighting to subdue, your characters all die. So the GM is required to tune combat very carefully to keep the game going at all. That is way harder than fudging. So constantly throwing out carefully tuned encounters at the party that challenge them, but still not beat them is completely unreasonable, especially when we're using dice, big random dice like D20s that can go sideways. So you end up with GMs fudging being largely accepted in the 5e community because the GM, this is such a good line from this person. Shout out to you, level 2 janitor, whoever you are. It says, so you end up with GMs fudging being largely accepted in the 5e community because the GM cares about things that the game does not care about. And although they are talking about 5e here, they could be talking about Pathfinder 2 as well. When the GM or the players care about something that the game doesn't care about, that is when you get into these sort of frictional problems. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, Gargs, you know, to that point, I think that's what most people would have expected them to do. For starters, Gargs realize that most people, most groups don't play out. I mean, they just talk in character or pseudo in character. They don't really make a lot of skill rolls. They might make skill rolls, but they're mostly performative. They don't actually really do anything or make any decisions. Most people just talk it out when it comes to social encounters. So even if you design, but how many people do you know that talk out a combat, right? Oh, you need to ask the barkeep for rooms for the night. You know, like, you know, a lot of people, we don't even make dice rolls. We just role play. And then I act and I say, oh, you should, you know, but nobody ever does that for combat. So for combat, they know that people are going to be using the rules, and they know that the rules need to be good because people are going to be using them and life and death is on the line. So that's why they spend all their time focusing on combat. I don't think that's actually, you know, pretty bad there. Let's see here. Yes, Emperor, negative versus positive feedback loops. That's exactly what I was talking about. Yes. Frostjack says the results of that poll really surprised me. Boothby. Good evening, Boothby. Where was this post located again? I know somebody who needs to see this. Red Vulpes. It was in r/RPG. So it was in the RPG subreddit. And the name of the post, which is still on the top page, is Players, how would you feel if you found out the DM is faking rolls or using ghost hit points for their monsters? And then there's a poll, but then the top comment as of right now is this comment from, it looks like it even got gilded. Yeah, someone gave it gold. So cool for whoever gave that gold, because that was a really good comment about this level 2 janitor who made this comment about talking about the game. When the GM cares about things that the game doesn't care about, that's when you get these problems. Yeah. Dan, but what's the point of the game and combat? If you were going to win no matter what, let's just skip combat. Dan, I don't know if I disagree with you. Dan, you might think, oh, Dan's being a troll. Kind of not, right? When people say, when people have been coming to play Pathfinder 2 and they're very excited about, they're like, the math just works. Combat encounter balance is bullshit in 5th edition. What they're saying is, I made a fight. I made a combat. And I, as the GM or the adventurer, need it to end in a certain way. And if it doesn't end that way, we have a problem. So I need a game system that will allow me to create combat encounters that have a fixed outcome. And if you do that, it means that, yes, the players are going to make rolls and move through the motions. But when people say that they prefer Pathfinder 2 over 5e, what they're really saying is they appreciate the fact that despite all of those dice rolls and all of that random variation that can occur with so many dice rolls, that Pathfinder 2 is so well designed that the outcome does not deviate. And that if I throw an encounter at the party that is designed for them to beat it and move on to the next encounter, they will do so. So what that means is that there's no question about who's going to win. The party's going to win. In fact, if you throw an encounter at the party that, quote, they are supposed to win, and they don't, that is when people start, and you do that for years. That's why people complain about 5e's encounter building rules, because they said, the game told me I should throw this at my party, and they will beat it, and it'll be a little tough, but they'll beat it. And then they ended up getting killed by it. And they're like, well, that's unacceptable. I didn't know it was going to happen. I need them to be able to beat that encounter because I have decided that that is what's important to the story. But to me, that's sort of contraindicative to role-playing games in general. I don't want known outcomes. I don't want fixed outcomes. I want random outcomes. I want variable outcomes. Dan says, I want interesting outcomes, like in Mouse Guard. Good game, Dan. Let's see here. Rule of Cool. I had a game with my optimized character with a whole group of new players unoptimized. I knew she was fudging as I was literally hit more times and the party had like 4 or 5 lower AC. Yeah, absolutely. And how did you feel about that Rule of Cool? How did that make you feel? Probably terrible, I would assume. I look at it this way. If you use fear as intended, you get a normal DC. If you use fear in an unusual way, then you get an unusual DC. Okay. Fair enough, George. Beowulf says, the more you talk during combat and describe the cool things your character does, the worse you roll. Isn't that the truth? That is always the truth. Damien says, meanwhile, when you're playing like, Vampire, Chronicles of Darkness, it'll let you just, bullshit and talk out the combat, which is not important at all, so that you can get back to the social dice, because that's where the game really lives. And that's very true. Sam says 5e is bullshit. Well, Sem Satito. Why do you think 5e is bullshit? I'm interested in what your thought process is. It's not a very well-reasoned argument. Oh, 5e is really bad. Can we have some more? Can we have a reason for that? Damien says Fantasy Age 2nd Edition, a game I want to check out. Made 0 hit points mean what you want it to be, just not dead. Right. Yeah. When you get to 0 hit points, it means something bad is going to happen, but it does not equal my character is now dead. And JG is right. I think we're back to emulation versus simulation and facilitation versus challenge. Correct, JG. Yes, it is only an issue because every fight ends in death. If people could lose a fight without it being a hard stop, it would work fine. Yes, absolutely it would. It would be completely right. Yes. And Dan, yes, just like Mouse Guard, just like Torchbearer, which is Mouse Guard, but not mice. And like Burning Wheel, which they're both derived from, combat can have different stakes, and kill conflicts are actually fairly rare. Santito says, what do you think about Paizo AP encounters? Well, I don't think they're great, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think Paizo AP encounters, number one, I think especially in the earlier ones, maybe they don't do this as much anymore. I haven't read some of the latest ones, but they use single monster high encounter. I think the greatest disappointment to me is the PL +2 moderate or the PL +3 severe. That's one monster of party level 2 higher, which is 80 XP, which is a moderate encounter, or one creature of party level +3, which is a severe encounter. I hate those encounters. And they use them all the time in their adventures. I don't like those encounters because they're not interesting. They're not dynamic. It leads to a lot of roll spam. People don't get to crit. People don't get to hit. Characters don't get to have their spells land. It's very frustrating, and it's very unsatisfying. So I don't like those AP encounters at all, Sentito. Secondly, I think the maps are way too small and uninteresting. There's not enough interesting terrain. There's not enough interesting ways to interact with the map. It's so small that you can get there in half a stride most of the time. And that makes the fight feel very stagnant and static, made worse by the fact that there's only 1 or 2 monsters most of the time. Third, a lot of times they'll just throw in a grab bag of monsters because they want to use some, whoever wrote the author, whoever wrote the book wants to use some monsters from Bestiary 2 or use some monsters from Bestiary 3, or they created some new monsters so they could pad page count at the back of the AP book, and they got to throw in this random monster, and you go, what is this? Why is this even here? It doesn't feel like it's out. You're like, okay, fine. We're playing this weird monster. And you're like, oh, and then we'll never see it again. We had to go through that whole rigmarole of learning about this monster and having all this story about it. And we never encounter that monster ever again for the entire campaign. So all of our battling against it and learning about it and maybe being like, oh, next time we fight it, it'll be better. We'll be more prepared for it. It's just wasted. So I don't like that they just throw in these just completely random encounters. And I don't mean random encounters like in the old school rolled dice. I just mean like you look at this encounter and you go, what is this thing even doing here? And the answer is, I don't know. So that's how I feel about Paizo AP encounters. Let's see. 5e is a bad tactics game and a bad storytelling game. Well, I will certainly agree that it is a bad storytelling game in that but Pathfinder 2 is a bad storytelling game. So let's be clear about that. Pathfinder 2 does have some pretty nice tactics though. So we'll give it the nod there. It is a very, let me tell you something. Okay. When you get, to around level 12 or 13, your casters have some nice power under their belts. And your fighter is now a legend, which no one else will ever be in the course of the game, except for a gunslinger. They're a legend in their weapon. Let me tell you something. When you're fighting a monster, which is higher level than you, and you as a fighter are hitting that creature on a roll of 1 or higher and critting that creature on an 11 or higher, that's a 50% crit rate. You feel pretty sweet. And you go tactics. And that makes you feel pretty good. Now, of course, once you get to that point, you're like, I don't see how I will ever miss again. But, it is that. Red Volpe says 5e doesn't make statements because making statements might make someone angry. True. That's why I like Warhammer, which says nobody likes elves, halflings are weak, ogres are OP, get used to it. Yeah, I mean, 5e is, it's the middle, right? It's where everybody goes to seek consensus. So it's going to naturally have some, going to be a little milquetoast at times. It's not going to have the most exciting out there statements. I mean, that's part of the reason why 5e won't reprint Dark Sun or they won't do this and why they're changing a lot of things, because they just want to be appealing to as many people as possible. But Doom says a lot of RPGs have made death an opt-in choice for the players. I bet we'll see Pathfinder and D&D do that eventually. Yeah, maybe. I think death is probably one of the most uninteresting things that can happen to you in an RPG game. So I'm not opposed to that. I'm also not opposed to wasting my time. Pathfinder 2 characters are complicated, and you put a lot of time and effort into even just building a level 1 character. I'm not talking about car-opping this thing and building it to the... It's just, going through the options. Oh, look at all these feats. Look at all these ancestries. Look at all these heritages. What did you build? Oh, okay, you're a magus. What would work well with that? I don't know. Maybe I'll be a rogue, and maybe I'll go elf, but maybe I could be halfling. It'd be kind of cool. Like, it just takes hours of thought and time and play, and then to just be like playing a game where it's like, well, I'm going into an encounter, which I know that the game and the DM and the adventure writers have designed for me to win. And then because we just rolled horribly, I'm dead now. Now I have to do all that again. And if I wanted to, because nothing I did was random, I could just literally remake the exact same character that just died. I just think that death is problematic for a lot of reasons. Now, if I'm playing an old school game where death is part of the core buy-in and the game is designed to support death, in the sense that maybe it takes 2 minutes to make a character, maybe there's catch-up mechanics so players can level up really quickly if they're lower level, then that's okay, because the game is obviously designed around that, and people are buying into the game going, I'm probably going to die. And so when you die, it's not a big thing. But in Pathfinder 2, you should be like, well, look, I've got hero points. I get to auto-stabilize. If something would kill me, I can spend all my hero points and I don't die. I have to go to dying 4 to die. I have all these hit points, heals for a tremendous amount of hit points. This game clearly does not want me to die. So when you do die, it's kind of very frustrating because you go, I understand that what just happened was kind of a black swan rare event. And that can make me kind of irritated at times. Let's see. They have gotten better at mixing up the level of monsters and encounters. Well, that is good to know, Boothby. I know you've been playing Strength of Thousands, which is definitely not the newest adventure, but it's newer. Emperor says, I think my group is going to try implementing the 0 hit points mean not dying, but a story consequence because that's closer aligned to the type of game we want to play. And Emperor, that is exactly what Knights of the Last Call is all about. It is about understanding that, you know, the rules matter and the mechanics matter. And whatever you have mechanics for is going to influence and shape the type of game that you're playing. You know, I see a lot of people who realize that the mechanics do not support their style of play. And so what they do is they just kind of like ignore the mechanics and they just, you know, role play and they just ignore the dice and they ignore the character sheets, which is fine, but you're not really playing a game at that point. You're just sort of kind of, I don't know what you're doing. You're kind of improving, but even improv has prompts, right? Even improv has rules. Oh, you can't, everything has to end in a question. You can't, everybody has to say, the next word has to start with the next letter in the alphabet, right? Like there's always some sort of game to it. Just sitting around talking and pretend might be fun, but it's not a game. So I like when the mechanics align with the type of game that you're trying to play. And Knights of the Last Call is all about trying to make people aware that these things, even these concepts even exist so that you can go out and explore them yourself. Let's see. Santito says, I'm playing Age of Ashes as a champion. Both the thaumaturge and the gunslinger of the party died by a Sharakao, which I don't even know what that is, last night. And to which I will say, shame on you, champion. How come you didn't save your allies with your awesome reaction? You kind of let them down, Santito. I'm disappointed. James says, making the game facilitate the AP is where 90% of the problems with second edition come from. Well said, James. I completely agree with that take, James Williman. I do think that Pathfinder second edition, I think when they were doing their playtesting and doing their research and listening to their feedback, I think they got the idea, which might be very accurate. Most of the people who are playing our game are playing our adventure paths. Most of the people who are playing our adventure paths are complaining that Pathfinder 1, which is the game that we had, is letting people raffle stomp, face roll their way through our APs. They've got broken spells that let them just immediately defeat everything. I bought this to give my players this epic challenge, and it's a joke. Give me a game that will let me buy your AP and run it as the author intended. And that is what we certainly have gotten. 5e is the Pizza Hut of RPG. It's fine, but it's never going to risk change because it's so broadly popular, but so it's never going to be good. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty true. I like character deaths too, Beowulf. Like some of my favorite Powered by the Apocalypse games are ones that use like the modern day kind of magpie, thirsty sword lesbians style, where your character, instead of a harm track or hit points or anything like that, your character has conditions. And whenever you would, take a GM move or something would happen to you, you mark one of the conditions. Your character becomes angry. Your character becomes afraid. Your character becomes whatever. And then if your character runs out of conditions, aka maybe they're getting their ass beat. If your character runs out of conditions, if you would mark a condition, but you have none to mark, your character is taken out. And what that means is fundamentally up to the player. And the reason why I like that is because I'm the type of player, and I play with players even when I game master, I'm playing with type of players where if I was playing an Avatar game, Avatar Legends, not the blue skin Na'vi, I'm talking about Aang and Korra. And this was a dramatic moment. And my character took their last condition, and my character is taken out. And I think it would serve the story. I might say, yeah, I died. That's not the GM. That's me, the player. I get to decide. On the other hand, if I decide I'm not done with this character yet, I think there's more interesting things I want to do with their character story, more things I want to do with their arc. Look, I get it. I'm taken out. That's going to be a problem. Maybe I'm captured by the Fire Nation. Maybe I'm thrown off a cliff and presumed dead, only to wash ashore on some strange forgotten beach. And I'm nursed to health by the people that I used to be sworn were my enemies. And it changes the way my character views the Water Tribe, because now I see how they're just a peaceful people. And my prejudices against them were completely wrong, right? It's going to change the story in dramatic fashion. But I get to make that decision. And, but there are plenty of instances and plenty of moments where me as a player would decide, no, this is a moment that my character would die for. And this is a moment where I think the story is better served by my character dying at this time. Spoiler alert. But like if at the end of Endgame, when Tony Stark uses the gauntlet, you can imagine in PBTA terms, the GM saying, okay, Mark 2, you're snapping, Mark 3 conditions. And Tony Stark's character says, yeah, I only have 1 to give. So my character is taken out. And everybody turns to Tony Stark playing Iron Man character, and they say, what does you getting taken out mean here? And the character thinks about the life cycle of their character, the character story arc, and they say, you know what? I think what would be coolest right here for me, what would be a fitting end for my character, is for them to die here in the battlefield, having saved everyone else's lives, proving that he was the man that will lay down the wire, take the grenade hit, which, goes back to the very first Avengers movie when Captain America says he wouldn't do that. Instead, he is the one who sacrifices himself to save everybody else, right? It's kind of a role reversal, and it's definitely the completion of a massive arc from, selfish, greedy, naive, industrialist, playboy to literally the self-sacrificing hero. So anyways, that was what fit that story moment. And some games help deliver on those kind of character moments. Anyways, it was a long-winded way of saying that. All right. By the way, Boothby note, mixing up the encounter levels has not made Strength of Thousands fun. Boothby complaining about Strength of Thousands is kind of a staple of the Knights of Last Call Patreon. By the way, if you're enjoying these conversations that we're having tonight, I've enjoyed chatting with you. I know several of you are members of the Knights of Last Call patrons. So if you like these kind of conversations with people who are kind of challenging assumptions and pushing back against, dogma, and they really want to get into the nitty gritty, into the marrow of RPGs, I really recommend that you check out our Patreon. Our Discord is private, but it is very, very, very fun. It's a more mature group. I think the average age is probably like upper 30s. And we are people who are looking at role-playing game as a whole life hobby. And we are always looking for ways to get more out of that experience. So if you enjoy these kind of conversations, I really recommend that you check us out. Patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. Link is in the description below. Santito said, I tried to save them, but I could not save them. I'm sorry. The good old wandering social encounter. That would be hilarious. The problem with dying being slow equal to the value and a bunch of debuffs, but you keep fighting, is kind of like, okay, well, I'm already getting my ass beat. Now you're going to just penalize me too. Like, I'd rather just be dead, I guess. There's like a death spiral concept there. I'm not saying you're completely off base, but like the idea of like going into like a critical state, an injured state. Like, I think that's kind of cool. But yeah, part of the other reason I don't like dying is like, look, this isn't real life. We're not trying to simulate real life here. We shouldn't be. These are my friends who are coming over to my house, or we're getting together online. They might only have 3 or 4 or 5 hours a week to play role-playing games. I'm really going to let their character die and make them forget. They could have a new character ready to go, but they're not joining this combat. I'm going to ask them to sit there for the next 20, 30, 40 minutes doing nothing while they get to watch everybody else play. Like, no, I'd rather not. Let's see. Let's see here. Wolpenstein says, honestly, I'm assuming you mean the authors and the writers of Paizo APs, ignore the core rules in the adventure pass like 30% of the time anyways. I have also noticed that. There are some times where I go, do you know how Pathfinder works? Badoom says the only reason the crafting rules suck is because of organized play and AP balance. There you go. Right, because they can't allow, if people could craft and like make stuff that was actually useful, then things would get out of control. For example, Badoom, in last season's Northern Reaches mega campaign on the Knights of Last Call Pathfinder 2, Knights of Last Call Pathfinder 2 mega campaign, crafting had the ability to make items that were higher level than the party, and you could make them for actual less money, and you could craft them in, you know, a week's time because it was real time game. As a result, like, some people literally made their characters like into crafters because it served the greater community of players, so that they could make some of the most powerful items in the game because they were more powerful than the things that people could get normally from the town shops or the bazaar, or even some of the dungeons. And it felt really appropriate because, you know, that character had to invest and spend their time, and they could have been out playing adventures and earning experience points. Instead, they were back in town crafting. It was a really, really cool experience to see crafting really be powerful and sweet and impactful. Solemn Magus says, I wonder how much their experience with Pathfinder Society have colored the way Pathfinder 2 design. I sadly think it was a lot. I've never really officially gotten that answer. I should ask Mark about that, but you know, my guess is in their minds, like, I mean, I'm willing to bet that most of the vocal people who gave them feedback about Pathfinder 1 and even the Pathfinder 2 design were probably Pathfinder Society members, you know, venture captains who were just really, really into Pathfinder Society, and the need to have everything just be, no one can exploit anything, make it balanced as possible, because we know that there's going to be some neckbeard at the next Pathfinder Society game who's going to come in here and break something or do something cheesy, and he's going to be like, well, actually, you can't do that because my character has the thing and thing and the thing, and they just want to avoid that. Edward with the troll. Well done, son. Let's see. What do you think about a mechanic that says once you would normally die, your character gets a condition, living on borrowed time? You get to keep playing, but in the next scene or session, you have to die. So basically, you're looking for a way to make your death count and have a lasting story impact. It's okay. It can feel a little heavy-handed and forced, Beowulf. My preference would just be, look, if this is a time where it makes sense, and we all think it would be cool, then your character should die. And if it's not, then they shouldn't. Now, I'm not talking about like where like a character goes, I want to make a new character. Can you fudge and kill my character? I'm talking about real, legitimate, random variations death. And if it's not a moment where your character, like if you're just fighting that random PL +3 that the AP just happened to throw in some random corridor somewhere, and it crits you on its first hit and crits you on its map attack, and you're like, well, I'm dead. You go, no, I'm not dead. Fear of death is more exciting than death. Absolutely, George. I mean, I think when people die in Pathfinder 2, I think Pathfinder 2 mechanics, like, it's like, oops, sorry about that. You weren't supposed to do that. We gave you a lot of options. I mean, keep in mind, people. Okay. You get knocked unconscious. You're at dying 1. You get brought back up. Now you're at wounded 1. You get knocked unconscious again. You're at dying 2. Maybe even get critically hit. Now you're at dying 3. You get brought back up again. You're wounded 2. Okay. You're right. A crit will kill us. So, by the way, we've been hit, drop, brought back up, crit, drop, back, hit, back up. It's been like 4 rounds. All right, we're at wounded 2 in this fight. We get crit. We go into dying 4. Well, we probably took die hard, so we actually don't die till dying 5. Dying 5. Okay, so we're dying 4, having been dropped for the 3rd time in a fight. Nobody in the entire party lay on hands us, heals us, battle medicines us, stabilizes us. No. They say, fuck you, make your flat check. We fail the flat check on our next turn, and our dying would be about to increase. We just cash in all our hero points, and we're totally fine. It completely resets the death counter, and you're stabilized. It is unthinkably hard to die in Pathfinder 2. I cannot stress this enough. Now, okay. So we avoided death. We have wounded 2 or 3 or whatever. We're messed up, right? 1 treat wounds check, and our wounded penalty goes away completely. So now our character is back to full hit points, no wounded. But you're right, we did have to cash in all of our hero points. But if it's been an hour, we might get a hero point. And now guess what? We have to go through all of that again. And then if we get to dying 5, cash in our hero points and we're fine. Like, I actually agree with Badoom. I do think that TPKs are more likely than single characters dying because of the way that the math works. The math is very tight. If somebody gets, if a monster gets a lucky couple hits or crits, like right at the beginning of a fight, round 1, round 2, maybe somebody gets hit a little bit, they're like at 70% damage, and then they get boom, 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 drop down, and now they're unconscious. Not even dead, just unconscious. But what's happened in that fight is that fight was a severe fight at 120 XP with 4 PCs. But the party hasn't taken out any of the monsters yet. And doesn't matter if a monster has 1 hit point remaining or all of its hit points remaining, it is just as deadly and effective, and it gets all of its actions and all of its damage. But now it is 3 PCs fighting a 120 XP fight, which means that is now an extreme fight. And an extreme fight has a real chance of somebody dying. So now the odds that the second PC goes down greatly increase. So now a second PC goes down. The party takes out one of the monsters, but now it's 2 PCs versus a couple of monsters that are still left. That is still maybe an extreme fight or even an extreme plus fight. So it just spirals super quick if someone gets dropped because of how tight the math is. The game, I mean, it works the other way too, by the way. If you're fighting like a severe fight, so monster of the party's level is worth 40 XP. So if you're fighting 3 monsters that are equal to the party's level, in other words, if assuming the monster is equal to the party, player character, if it's a 4-on-3 fight, right? 4 level 5 PCs, 3 level 5 monsters. That's a severe fight. Okay? That is a severe fight. But it works the other way too. If the party all jump on to the one monster and then it dies, guess what? Now it's a 4-on-2 fight. It's not even a severe fight anymore. It's a moderate fight that the game tells you is almost a joke. It's just designed to kind of just, lightly tax you, but you'll be fine. So very quickly, once one side starts to go down, the other, it steamrolls. That is how I've seen it play out in Pathfinder 2. Maybe it's different for you, but I see that it snowballs very, very quickly. So yeah. All right, Jay. $5 super chat, and that takes us over our goal. So thank you for showing your love and support for Pathfinder 2, everyone tonight. Appreciate it. Appreciate you all coming out and watching this channel tonight. And we will definitely be doing more of these in the future. We'll probably talk about some of the other classes. We can talk about other elements of Pathfinder 2. Leave a comment below, or if you're a member of the Patreon, head over to KLSC Content Chat. Let me know what kind of things you want to talk about, and we'll get to them. Remember, too, heroes, our $25 a month members, are allowed to join this stream as guests. So if you're a patron and you're a hero and you want to talk about a certain Pathfinder 2 concept or a class that you have a lot of experience with, I'd love to get some of you joining me on this so I could get your experiences and we could share your knowledge with the wider audience as well. All right, so Jade say, in Mr. Rex's Pathfinder 2 video, he said that 5e was more of a narrative game. Wrong, Law. There's one narrative mechanic, inspiration, and no one uses it. And I was shocked by that. I actually do agree. On paper, Pathfinder 5e is a more narrative game. You have inspiration, which allows you to roll with advantage, which is a huge benefit for anything, basically, in the game. And per the rules of the game, your character has these flaws, ideals, and bonds. And if you narratively play to those strengths, your character will be awarded with inspiration, which is a mechanical feedback loop that is rewarding narrative gameplay. And I thought, yeah, it's actually kind of impressive. 5e is actually a lot more narrative than people think. And then I was like, and everybody plays it like a storytelling game, so I'm assuming everyone uses this. And then I found out from the D&D Direct messages, the D&D Direct playtest feedback, from the mouths of the D&D design team, and from a lot of my fellow viewers and patrons who play 5e, that no one uses inspiration. And I was just like, the hell are you people doing? I don't even understand. So yeah, I actually completely agree with that. Bruno says, just be like my players and use your hero points to reroll some sense motive check. Yeah, don't spend your hero points, people. Don't spend them in Pathfinder 2. If you're dying, it's because you're spending your hero points. Don't spend your hero points. Always have one. Because if you die, you can cash in. You have to cash in all your hero points. So if you do have 2 or 3, feel free to use 1 or 2. But always keep 1. If you only have 1, you might as well have 0. You have 1. Don't spend them. Then you can't die. It's like nearly impossible. And also remember, when you spend a hero point, you don't get a better chance of succeeding. You get the same chance of success as you had the first roll. It's not like you actually do better. You just have, oh, I missed. Okay, well, I'll re-roll. Okay, well, you have the same % chance of missing again. If you had a shitty chance to hit the first time, you're going to have a shitty chance to hit the second time. It's not actually going to make you do any better. Hero points exist for 2 reasons, Pathfinder 2. Number 1, the game designers understood that occasionally players are going to roll nat 1s on their saving throws and be completely fucked by the system. They don't want players to be completely fucked by the system, and so they will allow you, when you roll a 1 on like someone paralyzes you or someone dominates you or, whatever, you can re-roll that so you don't roll a nat 1. And yes, 1 in 400 times you will roll double nat 1. And the game is like, sorry, we can only do so much. And that way it prevents any of those bad things from ever happening to you. The other thing that hero points let you do is be immortal. So that's the only reasons you should ever use a hero point. Yeah. All right. Beowulf says, love the channel. Can't believe it took me so long to find it. I'll probably join the Patreon eventually when I have the money. Well, Beowulf, in the meantime, we appreciate your hanging out with us and being part of the conversation. Obviously patrons are what supports this channel. We don't get a lot of views. I don't get as many views as Ronald over on Rules Lawyer or, as much as Nonats does on Nonats channel. But what I do get is a very, very passionate and engaged crew of people, that we have about 10,000 subs now. And the people who come to this channel come here because they really want these in-depth conversations. So, I appreciate anybody who can add to that because, it's like the line from Monster Hearts about story, any story that is small enough to fit in the mind of one person is not a story worth telling. So it's the same thing with our collective knowledge, right? We all learn more and benefit more by being part of this conversation. And I learn from you all, and hopefully you learn from me, and we all learn from each other. And that's what makes it so cool. Shadram says, nobody in my group used hero points. I introduced Derek hero points, the D10 plus 10 on a reroll. And now nobody ever has a hero point when they fall unconscious. I love it. Well, to be fair, if you're using Derek hero points, or AKA Mutants and Masterminds hero points, there is a little bit more of an incentive to use the hero points because, they're actually statistically it is better, right? The average of a D20 is 10.5. The average of a D10 plus 10 is 15.5. So you're rolling plus 5 better on average, which in Pathfinder 2 is a absolutely huge number. So you still can't roll higher than a 20, obviously, but it is better. But that being said, you don't need re-rolls to win a Pathfinder 2. The math is designed for you to just win eventually. Just use a couple buffs, flank, use aid actions, and you'll hit. Trust me, you'll hit. You'll win. And if for some odd reason the dice go completely against you, your hero point will keep you from dying. So, my advice is save the hero points for death. Use True Strike and True Target to do your fortune rolls. They're better because you actually get to roll twice and take the higher. So it's actually way better. Yeah, the OG Derek hero points from Rise of the Rune Lords were super broken. Those were the hero points that let you change a failure to success and a success into a critical success. But Derek hero points only got awarded not like once per hour or whatever. Derek hero points got like awarded like once an adventure, and they carried over. They didn't reset. So if you were at 0 at the end of a session, you didn't start the next session with 1. You had to earn them by being a big damn hero and saving the day and doing something really, really big. And then later on, once we went live, people in the chat could buy players hero points through their donations. And the players were kind of kicking ass and taking names until the Wheel of Pain came in. But anyways, I digress. All right, folks. Looks like we've made it to the end of the chat here. And I don't think there's any other outstanding questions or comments. And yeah, I had fun tonight talking about Pathfinder 2, talking about the Rogue. Let me know what your what your thoughts are about the class. Again, to sum up, Rogue's a great class, and I think it's got some really, really interesting, builds to it. I don't think the class needs a lot of change for Pathfinder Remastered. I think it's really good as it is. Yes, I think Mastermind and Eldritch Trickster and maybe even Scoundrel aren't really that great, and maybe they could use a little bit of tweaks. I'm sure they don't need it though. And again, I try to encourage people, don't feel like you have to be a Scoundrel in Racket in order to be a Scoundrel. Like, it's fine. Have an 18 dex. Take Thief and put a 14 or a 16 into Charisma. Take a bunch of social skills. You'll still feel like a really cool Scoundrel, but you'll also just be a brutal machine in combat. And quite frankly, I mean, combat is going to matter in most games. And even in games where combat doesn't matter that much, combat's still going to happen. And when it does happen, you damn sure don't want to lose it. So, all right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. So, this weekend, I don't know what my plans are. I might play some more Magic the Gathering tomorrow. I've been drafting March of the Machines. Fun set. I like it. Almost made me get my Arena account back online to do some drafts that way. Because I don't really get a chance to draft it that often. But, and yeah, I'll probably be up at the studio doing some work, putting up some new lighting mounts. So hopefully you all enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to know when we get line. Go live. That'd be great. Frostjack is saying our next one should be. We'll let the patrons vote. They voted for this one, by the way. The reason we did Rogue tonight, the patrons voted for Rogue. I think Barbarian came in second place. So I'll let the patrons decide. Frostjack, they'll get to decide. Let's do the Alchemist next. Yeah. And again, if you're watching this and you're a member of the community, let me know how you feel about it. If you're a member of the Patreon, let me know in KLC content chat, what else we could talk about. And if you're a hero, let me know if you want to hop on one of these and share your thoughts about the class. You don't even necessarily have to stay on for the whole, 2 or 3 hours. If you just want to hop on for 20, 30 minutes, talk about it and log off, we can do that too. So all you need is a halfway decent mic and a halfway decent headphones so you can hear me, and maybe a reasonable internet connection, and we'll be off to the races. So, all right, everybody, I am going to head out and wish you all a very, very, very lovely weekend. And I will see you next week on Knights of the Last Call. Peace out.